Chapter 202, Territory Intrusions. Mo played with the beast service card in his hand, as a multicolored butterfly flew around him. Chen Yucheng named this multicolored butterfly Rainbow Mark Butterfly. It was the most outstanding Ling beast he had ever raised up until now. Mo could feel an extremely weak presence come from the Rainbow Mark Butterfly. The thoughts were very weak, and there were many images that were indistinct. This was a characteristic unique to low-level Ling beasts. The higher the grade of the Ling beast, the more intelligent it would be. High-level Ling beasts were not much different than Shuzhe. This Rainbow Mark Butterfly was only 3rd grade, and its intelligence just forming. Naturally, there would be many messages that Mo could not understand. However, it could accurately understand Mo's orders and was very obedient. The beast pool had been constructed to make Jingshi. He had never thought that he wouldn't lack for Jingshi now. So the batch of Ling butterflies had been turned from a business product into for their own use. The Rainbow Mark Butterfly was the most outstanding of the 3 Ling butterflies. It had 3 spells: Rainbow Pupils, Illusion Poison, Poison Change. He ordered the Rainbow Mark Butterfly to cast the Rainbow Pupils. The Rainbow Mark Butterfly lightly fluttered its wings, a rainbow light landed on Mo's body. His eyes were suddenly covered in a layer of faint 5-colored light. Mo felt the world in front of him change. Everything he saw was gray-white. The silently masticating Rainbow Mark Butterfly communicated before Mo understood. The so-called rainbow pupil was to detect poison. It could detect the danger of poisonous items. Mo did not cultivate poison, so the spell was not very useful for him. The only place he could use it was in dan-making. Compared to Rainbow Pupil, Illusion Poison was much more interesting. Illusion Poison was to use poison to create illusion. Mo was very interested. He instantly thought of the uses for this spell. If he secretly fortified a few places of his formation with illusion poison, then no one would detect it. However, the spell most important to Mo was the 3rd spell, Poison Change. Rather than calling it a spell, Poison Change was more like a talent. According to Chen Yucheng's explanation, if he kept on feeding the Rainbow Mark Butterfly poison, especially high-grade poison, when it reached a certain level, it could cause the Rainbow Mark Butterfly to transform and enter a higher grade. As the grade increased, the intelligence of a Ling beast would increase, and there was a possibility of the addition of a spell. It was a pity that Mo did not have any interest in poison, much less high-grade poison. Suddenly, Mo smacked his forehead. How did he forget that? Didn't his inky black lava white fire have a deadly poison? That was the poison obtained by processing a 4th-grade inky black lotus seed. The grade of the inky black lotus fire was too low. Mo had decided to use the golden crow fire as the primary one. It was perfect for him to split the fire apart. The poison for the Rainbow Mark Butterfly, the fire for Lil Pagoda. Even though the grade of the inky black lava white fire was not high, but it was still a fire seed, and quite pure. But before that, Mo still needed to do one thing: forge the blue ice sword. The blue icicle crystal could only be forged with a cold fire. The grade of the golden crow fire was higher, but the attribute was not correct. The blue icicle crystal sword billet was about half a chi long, its body shaped like a prism. When the light reflected on the facets of the prism, it was very beautiful. 3 days later, the blue ice sword took form. The entire body was like a blue icicle, the tip of the sword extremely sharp. The body of the sword was made out of countless facets. As it floated in the air, a mist naturally formed around the sword. Mo's mind moved. Pew, the blue ice sword entered the ground, only leaving behind a sword-shaped hole. There was a circle of clear ice cracks around the hole. It could be seen just how cold it was. Mo's forging skill was not high and the blue ice crystal was just lower 4th grade. The grade of the inky black lava white fire was also too low. He had barely managed to forge a 4th grade flying sword. He didn't care that much. The 5 essence sword set emphasized the cooperation between the different qualities of the flying swords. Taking apart the inky black lava white fire, however, had taken Zhuamo quite a bit of effort. The poison from the inky black lotus had long ago merged into the flame. Zhuamo did not have the strength at his cultivation level to take it apart. However, he thought of a clever solution: let Lil Pagoda deconstruct it. The present Lil Pagoda only needed a bit to break through to 4th grade, its control greatly increased. It could control how to decompose what was put into it. The inky black lava white fire was quickly taken apart. The inky black lotus poison was separated out. What surprised Zhuamo was that this ball of inky black lotus poison was an invisible substance. When he used Ling power to carefully surround this deadly poison, he was instantly alarmed. His Ling power was quickly consumed. As expected from a 4th grade inky black lotus poison. This discovery made him hesitate. Could the rainbow mark butterfly tolerate such a strong poison? But quickly, he could feel the rainbow mark butterfly's anticipation and joy. The rainbow mark butterfly lightly flapped its multicolored wings, and a circle of light surrounded the poison. The ring of light continuously shrunk until it disappeared. Zhuamo was slightly disappointed. A line of black had appeared on the wings of the rainbow mark butterfly, but there was no other change. Lil Pagoda absorbed the fire seed, but there were no signs of another breakthrough. Alright, he could not be too greedy, Zhuamo mumbled. He started to absorb the golden crow fire. The atmosphere of the desolate wood reef was nervous and fretful. Everyone's face was slightly heavy. A few days ago, several Xiuzhe had escaped from the Jie River. They had encountered a group of very strong Xiuzhe. That group killed everyone they saw. Many Xiuzhe didn't even have the time to flee before they were killed. Instantly, the desolate wood reef became tense. These injured Xiuzhe had no strength to fly over the endless ocean, and could only stay on the desolate wood reef. Those Xiuzhe that had originally planned to travel to Little Mountain Jie through the Jie River didn't dare to move recklessly, and waited to see what would happen. The number of Xiuzhe on the desolate wood reef increased, but no one dared to cause a disturbance. Other than the intimidation of the 3 golden armor guards, they also understood, if there really was a powerful enemy, the formation on the island was their strongest defense. Without the beast pool, Chun Yucheng was idle. His face was full of worry. There's more than 600 Xiuzhe on the island, and more than 20 Ningmai. If something happens, that wouldn't be good. Shixiang is also in seclusion, what are you afraid of? Gongsun Cha was unconcerned and said heartlessly, worst case, we can just flee. What do you think the people in the Jie River are? Killing everyone they see. They really have no regard for the law. Chun Yucheng was righteously indignant. Gongsun Cha teased the gray butterfly and said lazily, who knows, probably a group of people who couldn't think things through. Suddenly, the crowd on the island shifted. The two instantly stopped what they were doing and stood up. Far away in the sky, there were many black dots. Chun Yucheng inhaled sharply, his face pale, voice trembling as he pointed at the black dots in the sky. What is that? Gongsun Cha also was motionless at his spot with a shocked expression. The dense crowd of black dots flew at the desolate wood reef at astonishing speed like a black cloud rolling over the sky. With a suffocating presence, they silently moved to a distance 20 li from the desolate wood reef. Yao Ma, someone trembled out those 2 words. It was as though a spark had been thrown into a pot of oil. The deathly silent desolate wood reef suddenly exploded. Yao Ma, Chun Yucheng felt his legs sore and weak, dropping to the ground. There were hints of terror in Gongsun Cha's eyes, but the terror was quickly changed to curiosity. Was this Yao Ma? It wasn't just him that had this thought. In reality, this thought uncontrollably flashed across many people's minds on the desolate wood reef. Other than the somewhat strange dark green skin, the Yao Ma in the sky didn't seem much different than Xiuzhe. On their foreheads, they all had a piece of crystal, the color and shape varied. Their bodies were mostly slender and were very handsome regardless of sex. This is Yaomo. Wow! Gongsun Cha sked. He rubbed his chin. Oh, almost as handsome as me, that's not very good. However, he quickly became speechless. The Yaomo in the sky quickly moved forward 3 li. Everyone was intimidated. People now found that the dark green-skinned Yaomo in the sky were in well-organized ranks that seemed to have been measured with a ruler. During the flying process, the entire troop did not have any hint of disorder, they were so synchronized that it was frightening. When several dozen people were so, everyone would find it to be nothing, but when thousands of people were so organized, an invisible pressure formed. It was as if there was 1,000 catty rock on everyone's chest. All the noise stopped, like someone had cut their throats. Really the elite. Gongsun Cha's eyes glowed as he muttered. He then looked in sympathy at the panicking Xiuzha on the island, and couldn't help but sigh, and there go the rabble. The contrast between the two sides was too strong. Of the thousands of people on the other side, no one was speaking, it was deathly silent. The Xiuzha on the island was panicking like a crowd of headless chickens. Prepare to run for your life, Gongsun Cha said to Chun Yucheng. What about Shi Xiang? Chun Yucheng asked, his expression blank. Find him. Gongsun Cha said. I'm here. At some unknown time, Zhuemo appeared behind the two of them. Escape, Gongsun Cha spread his hands at Zhuemo grimaced. He hadn't thought that he would encounter this just after he came out of seclusion. He knew that Gongsun Cha was right. Even though the island had 600 Xiuzha, it was just a grab bag of random cultivators. Looking at the military troop that was so terrifyingly organized, a hint of helplessness rose in Zhuemo's heart. The difference in power was not something a formation could bridge. Is it really Yaomo? Chun Yucheng was still somewhat lost. Gongsun Cha looked in curiosity at Zhuemo and Yao, not Mo. Zhuemo nodded, mostly Ghost Attendant Yao and some Night Stalk Yao. Ghost Attendant Yao? Night Stalk Yao? Gongsun Cha had an interested expression. To them, Yaomo was a very distant monster. The most basic Yao are called Little Yao, about our Lianqi. The next level is Ghost Attendant Yao, like our Zhuji. The Night Stalk Yao are equivalent to our Ningmai, Zhuemo explained simply. That scared me. Then can't we hold this place? Chun Yucheng said excitedly. Gongsun Cha shook his head but didn't speak. Zhuemo grimaced, probably not. Yaomo emphasize killing and have endured fighting since they were born. They live more harshly than we do. Also, you can also see their organization. Our side only has scattered soldiers and heroes, we are not a match. Then what do we do? Chun Yucheng's little face became pale again. Flee. Zhuemo gritted his teeth and said hatefully. His heart was filled with sorrow. The good days of sitting and taking in money had reached an end. Chapter 203 Date Seed Ship, Miss, the position of this island is extremely good, it is perfect for guarding the Jie River, the middle-aged man said respectfully. Is that the formation of a Xiuzha? The female did not reply. She was staring at the hoop of light that was like a sun above the island. Yes, Mississippi. He opened his mouth, but perceptibly swallowed his words. Oh. The female said faintly, check first if there is any suspicious targets among them. If not, push them out. Yes. The middle-aged man instantly complied. You really are kind. A male beside the female said in a sarcastic tone. He was like a crane among the chickens, his entire person like a burning flame, a flame-red crystal on his forehead. Sweeping a glance at the rebellious male, the female was calm. Yen Feng, shut your mouth. Yen Feng smirked. The Xiuzha on this island are just rabble. Give me 500 troops, and I can sweep them clean. If you let them go, isn't it letting them off easy? The female was not moved. Our job is to find someone. Yan Feng suddenly became excited. Mu Shi, you forget that they are Xiuzhe. Our enemy. The more we kill, the less enemies we have. Mu Shi's tone became cold. Sir Yan Feng, please watch your tone. You are speaking to your direct commander. If you overstep again, you will be treated according to military law. Yan Feng was so angry fire came out of his eyes. The last bit of intelligence allowed him to keep his control. He knew the woman in front of him would do as she said. The composition of Yao was extremely complex. There were many species. Different than the reproduction of humans, Yao were born from nature, formed from the Ling energy of the world. Like Mu Shi, she came from the largest clan of Yao, the Wood clan. They were all formed from flora. Yan Feng came out of desolate Western Mountain Sky Fire branch. The reproduction of the Fire clan was not as prosperous of the Wood clan. They did not have many Yao, but they were natural fighters, their personality explosive and brave. The Wood, Fire, Gold, Water, and Earth clans were the 5 largest clans of the Yao, but there were other little clans as many as sand. Due to the abundance of Yao, every decade, some small clans would be born. Due to this, Yao society was very accepting and very transparent. This type of transparent and complete government was like an enormous squid that reached its tentacles into every corner. It was also this governance that had born from countless great minds and strong elders that allowed the Yao to quickly recover. For example, Mu Shi was the most accomplished of the youths of the Wood clan. Even though her cultivation was not outstanding, but she had started her duties very early. Yan Feng rarely found an opponent that could match his offensive power and was even stronger than Mu Shi, but due to his infighting within the ranks, he was punished and placed under Mu Shi's command. In reality, the two once had been classmates, but they had always been at odds. Suemo found he actually wasn't nervous. He was slightly surprised. It seemed that fighting and killing really hardened people. However, Pu Yao's words instantly made him nervous. They have come to find you. Find me? Suemo gaped. Stars in daytime, you alerted them. Pu Yao was very calm. This made the nervousness in Suemo's heart decrease. Stars in daytime, what does it do? Suemo asked a question that had been hidden in his heart for a long time. Not much. Some strong Yaoma would try to borrow the power of the stars to recover from serious wounds, and this forms the stars in daytime. Pu Yao said. It was you. Pu Yao smiled coldly, none of my business. He then frowned. But these things are slightly irritating. Aren't you a Yao? Should you be of the same kind as them? Suemo couldn't really grasp Pu Yao's attitude. However, if it wasn't Pu Yao, who was it? Was it the gravestone? Pu Yao did not like Xiuzhe. Suemo could understand this, but he could not understand that Pu Yao didn't even like the Yao. They don't have any connection to me. Pu Yao's face was cold. Suemo saw that Pu Yao didn't seem to want to mention this matter, and perceptively changed the topic. Do you have any good suggestions? Your luck seems pretty good. The arrivals are the Wood clan. Pu Yao glanced at the organized ranks of Yao troops in the sky. They don't like fighting. Wood clan. Suemo was very curious. Suemo might have openly spoke about the little Yao before, but that was buying and selling at the same time. Suemo was very unfamiliar with Yaoma. Seeing that he could not avoid a conflict with the Yaoma, it was beneficial for him to know a bit more. A large clan, but it has many cadet branches. Formed from flora. Pu Yao introduced shortly. Oh, Suemo nodded, not understanding. What was formed from flora? But he knew that Pu Yao definitely did not have the patience to explain. Suddenly, Suemo detected a strong consciousness ripple. He couldn't help but jump. Such a strong consciousness. The consciousness ripple came from the other side and swept the sky above the entire desolate wood reef. Before this, Suemo had been very confident in his consciousness. He had almost never encountered a Shouja who had a stronger consciousness than he did. But the strength of this consciousness was far above his. They are searching for you. Such a pity, just Night Stalk Yao, they believe they have the skill. Pu Yao smirked. He seemed to understand what Suemo was thinking. It's very normal. They only cultivate the consciousness, it isn't something a half-ass like you can compare to. Pu Yao's interest was unknowingly stirred. Yao cultivate the consciousness so the division for spiritual power is much finer than the Shouja. Star fire, manifestation, spirit seed, Yin spirit, Yao mansion, 6 revolutions, and sky channels. You are just at manifestation. Among them, the most powerful have finished spirit seed. Even though their spirit is weak, but it can easy to kill you. Manifestation. When the starfire is full, it manifests, seed born in the heart to become planted in the spirit births the Yin spirit opens the Yao mansion, spiritual manifestation. Oh, your leaf hand is a manifestation. The consciousness can become tangible? Suemo asked. Of course, it's so simple, do you really need to think about it? Pu Yao's face was full of disdain. However, you just entered manifestation, you're very far off from spirit seed. What is called seed born in the heart? Suemo couldn't help but ask, his head bloated. You'll know when it is time. Pu Yao had used up his patience. Then now. Solve it yourself. Pu Yao said impatiently before disappearing. They are going to attack. Gongsun Cha pulled Suemo back. The attacking posture of the other size was so obvious even an idiot could see. Suemo couldn't help but become nervous. Pulling Gongsun Cha and Chun Yucheng, he pushed his voice low, prepare to escape. Where? Chun Yucheng's face was puzzled. Gongsun Cha suddenly opened his mouth, towards the Jie River. The Jie River? Little Mountain Jie. Suemo was very surprised, isn't that heading for the net? The endless ocean is vast and borderless. We need to fly multiple months to see land, there is no place to hide. Gongsun Cha was very calm, a hint of heat in his eyes. When it's time, these people will all scatter. We'll go the opposite way and break through. They definitely wouldn't have thought of it. They just came from Little Mountain Jie, Little Mountain Jie definitely has fallen. If we go to Little Mountain Jie, we have no escape. Chun Yucheng was frightened by Gongsun Cha's suggestion, so frightened he woke up. This is not certain. Gongsun Cha shook his head. If Little Mountain Jie has fallen, what would come definitely wouldn't just be this little amount of Yao. This is a little. Chun Yucheng pointed at the organized and solemn Yao army in the sky, and shouted. To us, it seems like a lot. But if they want to attack Sky Moon Jie, it is far too few, Gongsun Cha said quickly. Suemo instantly reacted. You mean they are a little troop that snuck in? Possible. Gongsun Cha said. What did they sneak in for? I don't know, they probably have a target. Suemo suddenly thought of what Pu Yao had said. Did these people really come to find him? No, to find the Yaoma of the stars in daytime. He continued to weigh the choices in his heart. Truthfully, Gongsun Cha's suggestion was very dangerous, no, it was extremely dangerous. But Suemo felt that the success of that suggestion was very likely. From this, it could be seen that he was in support of Gongsun Cha's suggestion. Chose which one? He was just a little Shouja that had just broken through to Ningmai and hadn't seen much. Facing a choice that would determine life and death, he couldn't help but hesitate. Yet the other didn't give the time to hesitate. The sky above the other side's troop was suddenly dark. Strong Ling power ripples were like a harsh wind that swept past. Damn it! Suemo jumped in fright. The other side was going to attack. The Ling power ripples passing through the air were the same as Yang Fiend hard lightning, but the terrifying presence it gave off was hundreds of times stronger. He didn't doubt that their attack would flatten all of Desolate Wood Reef. If he didn't run now, when could he run? He grabbed Gong Sun Cha and Chun Yu Cheng, not caring for anything else, and suddenly jumped into the water. A gold light flashed, and the Buddha sound hoop landed in Zhuomo's bosom, the presence of the formation on the Desolate Wood Reef weakening. The Desolate Wood Reef instantly exploded. He ran. Zhuomo ran. Run! Everyone, run! At this time, with a large sound, a bolt of lightning twisted and struck the Desolate Wood Reef. Dong! A muffled sound hit everyone's heart. Those Xiuzha with weak cultivations bled from their mouths and nose. Everyone couldn't help but turn their head. The Desolate Wood Reef with its layers of formations was like paper in front of the lightning, cleanly wiped out. More than 10 of the Xiuzha that moved too slowly were swept by the after ripples and torn to countless pieces, not even having the time shout before their souls were destroyed. In the ocean, Zhuomo didn't have it good either. The blood inside his body was roiling, his Ling power almost spiraled out of control. Gong Sun Cha and Chun Yu Cheng's faces were pale, the power of the one attack was so powerful that it even passed into the ocean. At the border of life and death, Zhuomo became calm. A date seed appeared on his hand, a talisman ship was carved on it. This date seed ship had been taken from Nan Mingzi's body. However, it required too much Ling power, so he hadn't found out how to use it. In seclusion this time, after finishing forging the 5 essence sword set, Zhuomo had spent a lot of effort on the talismans that he did not understand. He hadn't expected that he found some methods, and including this date seed boat. At this time, he didn't dare to hold anything back, the Ling power in his body furiously flooding towards the date seed boat. A little date red wooden boat with an old aura appeared in front of everyone. Zhuomo's hand moved. They felt the scene in front of them blur and then they were inside the ship. The ship was dry and clean. The water outside the ship seemed to be stopped by an invisible power, unable to enter. Zhuomo hurriedly directed the date seed ship to sink to the bottom. The thick water could stop the search from the other's consciousness. If they could flee to a place that the other could not detect them, they would be temporarily safe. Chapter 204 Improvement. The date seed ship submerged at a fast rate. In a blink, it had reached 10 li under the surface. Through the windows on the ship, the outside was pitch black. The surroundings were silent, the noise from the outside was completely blocked. Everyone finally relaxed. The Yao army used one attack to destroy any of the hopes they had left. Silly Bird shook the water off. She looked like a chicken in soup broth, with all of the drooping features. Even the proud Silly Bird was scared half to death by the hard lightning that had come from the sky and became much more docile. When Zhuomo had come out of seclusion, he had taken Silly Bird and the others with him. Chun Yu Cheng collapsed on the ground, heaving. By comparison, Gong Sun Cha was much more composed, but there was still a hint of fear lingering in his eyes. Of everyone, the only ones that could truly maintain their calm were the 3 golden armor guards. As usual, they held their swords and stood like statues. Zhuomo had recovered from the nervousness. Seeing everyone was complete and whole, his mood became much better. Just having escaped death, no one in the ship had any interest in talking, all of them catching their breaths and calming their minds. After a while, Zhuomo found his mind had relaxed greatly and stood up, and began inspecting the date seed ship. During his seclusion, even though he had figured out how to activate the date seed ship, but he hadn't studied it. Right now, the date seed ship was their life-saving talisman, he didn't dare to leave it up to chance. He walked around the cabin of the ship, closely inspecting it. Chun Yu Cheng and Gong Sun Cha saw his actions and perceptively chose not to speak. This was. Zhuomo carefully inspected the formations carved on the date seed ship and was very shocked. A Jingshi talisman. The date seed ship was a 4th grade talisman, and it was even a rare Jingshi talisman. Jingshi talismans were talismans that could use Jingshi as a source of power. Those were usually large-sized talismans. The thousand-wing boat that Zhuo Mo had seen in Dongfu was a classical example of a Jingshi talisman. Historically, only large sect would forge Jingshi talismans. The materials that were needed were not something a normal shoja could afford. There were some Jingshi talismans for single-person use but not many. Compared to the Ling power inside Jingshi, the Ling power inside shoja was much purer and easier to control. This date seed ship was a Jingshi talisman. It could carry 100 shoja, able to fly either in air or in the water. Zhuo Mo's interest was stirred up. This was the first time he had seen a Jingshi talisman. He instantly started to study the formations on the ship. Jingshi talismans were talismans where formations were used most purely. Shoja only had to make some simple commands, and it could work on its own. In a short period of time, he found the locations to put in Jingshi. The cabin was empty, and did not even have tables or chairs. The place to insert the Jingshi was on the ceiling. The ceiling of the cabin had a depiction of the Big Dipper, the 7 stars connected. Each star was the place to put in Jingshi. Zhuo Mo took out 7 third-grade Jingshi from his ring to insert in the positions of the Big Dipper. When he shoved the last piece of Jingshi in, everyone felt the cabin light up, a date-colored red light emanated from the ship. Wow, Jingshi talisman! Gong Sun Cha was surprised. A Jingshi talisman that I got from Nanming Zi. Zhuo Mo stared at the formations on the ship, calculating inside without turning his head to answer. Through the consciousness leaf hand, he could clearly see the seals running through the ship. The more he saw, the more admiration he had. Before this, he had never seen a Jingshi talisman before, so he never had seen Jingshi talisman formations before. The formations were like a gigantic mesh going through the entire date seed ship like they were the channels of the ship. Ling power flowed out from the 7 Jingshi into the channels and activated the formation. He quickly found the differences between the date seed ship and the talismans he had studied before. The Ling power that came out of the Jingshi was very steady. Normal talismans consumed the Ling power of shoja, the Ling power would have a variety of changes and would not be so steady. There were advantages and disadvantages to both methods. Jingshi talismans did not consume the Ling power of the shoja. As long as there was Jingshi, it could keep working. The disadvantage was that its uses were set, and it was less flexible to adjusting to sudden changes. Normal talismans were the exact opposite. Due to consuming the Ling power of the shoja, it could not compare in how long Jingshi talismans could be used. However, they could do many things and were very good at adjusting to sudden changes. Zhuo Mo's heart suddenly moved. If the two advantages could be put together, that would be great. Once the idea popped up into his head, it could not be erased. After studying for a while, he started to actually ponder if the flash of inspiration he had was realistic or not. The space inside the date seed ship was enough for him to set up large amounts of formations. The smaller the space was, the harder it was to set up formations. Forging experts could set down multiple formations in a flying sword the size of a finger. Zhuo Mo was far from reaching that level. Space was very important for him. The bigger the ship was, the easier it was for him to make modifications. There were a total of 3 formations on the date seed ship. One was a space formation, one was a Ling shield formation, the last was a water movement formation. Zhuo Mo paid more attention to the Ling shield formation. Its defensive ability was average. He decided to change the micro-light formation to a 7 bright micro-light formation. Zhuo Mo only needed to put 7 bright light formation into the micro-light formation, and the defensive power of the shield would increase by at least 50%. This technique of interlocking child formations was something he had comprehended from the sky ring moon chime formation. The structure of the bright light formation was simple and easy to carve, so Zhuo Mo quickly finished the 7 bright micro-light formation. The Ling shield over the ship gradually changed, the light becoming more intense and the shield thicker than it had been before. Suemo nodded in satisfaction. It seems his skill in making formations had improved once again. Before, this wouldn't have been so simple. Strengthening the Ling shield mean that the consumption of Ling power would increase correspondingly. However, Suemo did not worry about this. Right now, he lacked for everything except Jingshi. Gu has lots of Jingshi. He suddenly hit his head. Right, how did he forget his greatest advantage? Chun Yucheng and Gongsun Cha were frightened by Suemo's action. The two exchanged looks of puzzlement. Jingshi. Right now, he had piles of Jingshi. Before, he had been thinking of carving an offensive formation on the ship that could be controlled by a person. That way, they didn't need to leave the ship, but they could fight against their enemies. When Suemo realized his advantage, he suddenly reacted. He had made a mistake. Since it was hard to control Jingshi talismans precisely, rather than think of ways to increase the control over it, it was better to give the talisman a formation that did not need to be controlled, like a cloud lightning net. He only needed it to protect the ship. As to increasing the maneuverability of the Jingshi talisman, he could slowly study it. The high consumption of the cloud electrical lightning net was nothing for Suemo, who wanted to keep his life. The more he thought, the cleverer he found the idea. Even though there were still big gaps, but it was the most realistic plan at present. No matter what, his little life came first. He took out a large pile of materials and started to carve formations inside the cabin. What is Shixiang doing? Chun Yucheng asked. Gongsun Cha looked over. I don't understand, but he seems to be setting up formations. We should run, not setting up formations now. Chun Yucheng said hurriedly. I don't know, Gongsun Cha was also puzzled. He could see what Shixiang was generally doing. Even though he didn't know why Shixiang was putting up formations now, but he believed in Shixiang's judgment. Currently, the only thing he was so shocked by was the fact that Shixiang seemed to be playing with the Jingshi talisman. Could Shixiang modify Jingshi talismans? He knew was much harder to modify talismans than to remake them. After a talisman was successfully forged, it was one complete entity and had reached an equilibrium. Modifying was equivalent to first breaking the equilibrium and then setting a new equilibrium. Had Xiang's skills with formations reached such a level? The golden armor guards stood silently. Silly Bird had recovered from the fright, raising her bird head and stepping her unique bird walk. Suemo was very careful. Bright light formation was only an enhancing formation, and did not have much effect on the equilibrium of the talisman. However, cloud lightning net was a third-grade formation. It was very strong and needed large amounts of Ling power. Suemo needed to add a few more channels to conduct Ling power to satisfy the cloud lightning net. The cloud lightning net was not difficult for Suemo. The difficulty laid in setting the seals to channel the Ling power. The formations on the Date Seed boat before had been very complete. In order to add more seals to increase Ling power pathways, he needed to change the entire structure. This was the most difficult part. If he wasn't careful, he could most likely cause the Ling power pathways to intersect and then collapse. Suemo was very clear about this, so he continuously modeled it in his head before proceeding. 4 hours later, he finally thought it through and started to move. What he did first was increase the number of Jingshi. The Ling power expenditure of cloud lightning net was very large. 7 pieces of Jingshi was not enough to satisfy its needs. Suemo added another 21 pieces of Jingshi. On the ceiling of the ship cabin, 28 stars shone. To save his life, Suemo did not care how much Jingshi he had to spend. Right after, he started to set up the cloud lightning net, and added more Ling power channeling seals. This modification took 12 hours. When he finished, he was exhausted. However, he finally finished. Hiss hiss. Sounds came from the Date Red Ling shield. Immediately after, countless fine lines of miniature lightning appeared on the surface of the Ling shield, swimming like little snakes. Fine lightning appeared at astounding speed and gathered. In the blink of an eye, a net appeared on the Ling shield. A net constructed of arm-thick lightning. It was like a silver net had covered all of the date seed ship. The lightning net slightly trembled, the sound slowly weakening until the hisses had disappeared. What was wondrous was that, even though they were in the water, the lightning net on the Ling shield showed no signs of dissipating, but was as dense as any other object, silently covering the Ling shield. The presence of the date seed ship instantly changed. Chapter 205 War Chess, Where are we heading? Chen Yuqing asked uncertainly. Jie River. Gong Sun Cha's face was relaxed, half lying on the bottom of the cabin, relaxed and idle. How do you know? Chen Yuqing looked worriedly at Suo Shixiang, who was still working on the date seed ship. Shixiang had been working for several hours and showed no signs of stopping. Ha! Shixiang might look careful and conservative, but if he's pressured, he's vicious and decisive. Gong Sun Cha said unconcernedly. What happens if Little Mountain Jie has been taken by the Yamo? Chen Yucheng's face was slightly pale. The strong offensive power of the Yao army had almost destroyed his soul. No way about it. It's all up to luck. Gong Sun Cha stretched out his waist, and laid down completely. With a hiss, a silver light suddenly flashed outside the ship. Just having laid down, Gong Sun Cha instantly sat up, eyes looking outside. When he saw the lightning outside the Ling shield, he first stilled, and then had joy on his face. Chen Yucheng, who was in a fragile state of mind, was half scared to death by the noise. How's the power of that thing? Gong Sun Cha pointed outside the ship, and asked Swa Mo, who had finally stopped and walked over. Better than nothing. Swa Mo sat down in exhaustion. My skill in formations isn't enough. This lightning net doesn't have any dead ends, but it is way too loose. Don't have high hopes about the power. Gong Sun Cha nodded, and then asked, how far have we traveled? This boat goes 100 li every 2 hours, how long has it been? 12 hours. Then it's 600 li, Zhuo Mo said. Seems no one has chased after us. I wonder what this Yao army is looking for. This is an unexpected calamity. Chen Yuqing sighed. Zhuo Mo naturally could not say the Yao army was searching for him, but seeing Chen Yucheng's worried expression, he knew this docile person had been frightened too deeply today, and hurried to comfort him. The two Shidi had two completely different personalities. Chen Yucheng was docile, and somewhat lacking in courage, only interested in animals. Gong Sun Cha was the exact opposite. He was cunning and daring, calm when there was trouble, and had a devious and dark character. He didn't have much interest in butchering. Follow the flow. Gong Sun Cha inserted and then raised his delicate face, his eyes shining. Shixiang, there's nothing to do now. Why don't you get them to practice their cooperation? Zhuo Mo understood that Gong Sun Cha meant the 3 golden armor guards. Cooperation. Gong Sun Cha's words reminded him. The blow that the Yao army had given them was too strong. The troops that were so organized they were almost insane, so neat that it seemed almost impossible, and that lightning attack that they couldn't even hold their heads up against. Zhuo Mo felt that he wouldn't forget it in his life. The shock and panic of the Xiuzhe was the perfect definition of the word rabble. Every time he thought of it, he felt coldness seep uncontrollably from his heart. The Yao army gave all the Xiuzhe on the desolate wood reef a lesson. Even the stupidest person could see the difference between the two, and could feel the difference in power. Zhuo Mo suddenly had a feeling that the era of individual power was nearing its end. However, he quickly threw the problem to the back of his mind. A big problem like an era ending, it wasn't something a little Ningmai like him could relate to. But he agreed greatly with Gong Sun Cha's suggestion. However, while he agreed, how to accomplish it was the true problem. I don't know how. We can slowly try. Gongsun Cha's decisive tone made Sui Mo look at him. He grinned. It's better than losing our lives. For some reason, Sui Mo felt Gongsun Shidi's delicate face was like the raised head of a snake, vicious and cold. But when he turned his eyes towards Gongsun, Shidi's smile was so sunny and timid that Sui Mo felt he was mistaken. Okay. He nodded. Before having seen the Yao army, Sui Mo might have found it extraneous, but right now he didn't hesitate. This was useful. Very useful. For him, starting from a blank slate wasn't a new experience. Before, as long as he could make Jingshi, he would work with all his effort. Now, Sui Mo discovered that his little life was more important. His belief suddenly turned, anything that could save his little life, he would definitely put everything in. The two crowded together and started to discuss. Both were greenhorns, the mood was vibrant, but quickly, the discussion reached a standoff. Words had no proof, especially when the two had divergent views, no one could persuade the other. At this time, Gongsun Cha did not care Sui Mo was his Shixiang. His face was flushed as he argued, his expression ferocious, he no longer looked like a weak and bashful young master. If we each have a troop and can really fight, that would be nice. Sui Mo sighed, then who is right, it naturally can be seen. Yes. Gongsun Cha's face was also bitter, holding his head and sighing. Talking soldiers on paper, it is useless. A voice suddenly came inside Sui Mo's mind. Want to try? I've got a way. Pu Yao suddenly came out. What way? Sui Mo's mind became alert. Pu Yao might like to boast, but he occasionally had some real skill. Pu Yao looked at him. Actually, this kind of thing has been played since a long time ago, like seal soldier battle board, like puppet chess. What is that? Hearing those two new terms, Sui Mo couldn't help but be curious. It is a kind of war chess. War chess. There's many ways to play, like one-on-one, or many against many. Pu Yao seemed to suddenly sink into his memories, refocusing after a while. I remember it was quite fashionable back then. You have those? Sui Mo looked suspiciously at Pu Yao. No. Pu Yao shook his head. The most important part is the rules. It is very easy to make them. He threw a ball of light at Sui Mo. Here, these are the rules for all kinds of war chess games that I played before, and how to make them. When did you become this kind? Sui Mo's gaze became even more suspicious, but his hands were not slow at all, rapidly catching the ball of light. I don't want you to die this quickly. Pu Yao looked scornfully at Sui Mo before disappearing. The date seed ship silently slid along the bottom in the pitch-black water. For everyone, this was a very long period of boredom. Chen Yuqing seemed to be accustomed to this kind of boredom. He continued to busy himself in his experiments. Sui Mo occasionally took out the golden crow fire. He seemed to be forging something. So boring. Gongsun Cha yawned. He seemed to be the only person that didn't have anything to do. He had thought about teasing Silly Bird to relieve his boredom, but Silly Bird ignored him, proudly strutting her bird walk in the cabin. Lil Black climbed around the cabin without exhaustion. Lil's pagoda floated in the air, spinning in its spot. The three golden armor guards were like three statues, not having moved a finger in days. Originally, Gongsun Cha had been worried they might meet some water element ling beasts. In the legends, there were many terrifying ling beasts in the endless ocean. However, their luck seemed to be exceptional and they traveled smoothly. But these days were really so bland. Done, Sui Mo suddenly stated, making Gongsun Cha jump in fright. He crowded over. What's done? What is this? Chess. Something called a war chess, Sui Mo said uncertainly. I don't know if I made it correctly. Come, let's try. Gongsun Cha, so bored he had almost fallen asleep, instantly jumped up. Okay. Zuemo took out a jade scroll, recording down some of the rules that Pu Yao gave him and threw it to Gongsun Cha. Interesting. Gongsun Cha took the jade scroll. After a look, he became alert. Zuemo also started to read the rules. Reading it in detail, he was instantly frightened. Fuck. This was that complicated. The dense paragraphs of rules made his head feel numb. He heard Gongsun Cha's voice full of enthusiasm. This bit is interesting, yes, oh, I understand. Zuemo could only force himself to keep reading. An hour later, when Zuemo's eyes were unfocused and his brain faint, he suddenly heard Gongsun Cha say, so interesting, so interesting. It's really too interesting. Zuemo raised his head in shock. He saw Gongsun Cha look excitedly at him, and say, let's begin. If I know there was something as fun as this, I wouldn't have learned how to butcher. What Zuemo forged was puppet chess. It was simpler. The size of the Seal Soldier battle board was bigger, requiring better skill at forging, and had more complex rules. Basically, puppet chess was made from a set of little illusions. In a circle 1 zhang wide, miniature mountains and rivers were perfectly depicted. There were even clouds in the sky that slowly changed. Suddenly, these white clouds started to rain. Under the rain, the water in the river suddenly grew. A Shilja wearing Taoist robes suddenly charged into the sky from the river, slowly scanned the surroundings. Seeing there was not anything, the person went back into the river. Exquisite. Truly too exquisite. Gongsun Cha gaped, his eyes changing from excited to scorching. Zuemo was also shocked by such exquisiteness. Even though he had made it from beginning to end, but he had never thought of the result of the end product. This wasn't some chessboard, it was like a complete little world. Everything inside would naturally cycle on their own. So wondrous. Zuemo's mind became blank. Quick, how to play? Gongsun Cha urged. Zuemo refocused and handed him a piece of third-grade Black Days crystal. Put your mind into it. He also took up a piece of Black Days crystal and flooded it with his consciousness. He felt the scenery in front of his eyes change, and he seemed to be looking from the sky. His eyes unconsciously looked down. Yao. 9 Yao were arranged in an organized square. He could clearly feel the connection between him and the 9 Yao. He was even able to use the eyes of any of the Yao to see everything in the surroundings. At the same time, the information of the 9 Yao flowed through his mind. His mind moved, and a Yao suddenly stepped 3 paces forward, leaving the troop. He instantly controlled it to do many strange and awkward poses. So interesting. Very interesting. Zuemo was in shock. Chapter 206 What was that? Zuemo was very depressed. In the first 2 matches, he had won. The 3rd round was tied. They also tied for the 4th and 5th. After the 5th round, he never won again. In total, they had battled for 10 matches. 5 losses, 3 ties, and 2 wins, that wasn't a good result. The more they played, the greater the gap between them became. He was very surprised. Gongsun Shidi, who looked shy and weak, was very aggressive. In the last few matches, not soon after the match had started, Zuemo was killed off. Zuemo lost so badly that even Pu Yao couldn't keep looking. I'll go. Pu Yao jumped out, took over control, and started to fight against Gongsun Cha. Gongsun Cha was instantly obliterated. The strong ability to command that Pu Yao displayed made Zuemo intoxicated. Pu Yao, who seemed quite feminine, was extremely aggressive when he was in command. You guys can slowly torture yourselves. Gu will play on Ji's own. Zuemo muttered inside. This person and this Yao were natural-born militants. In other words, they were born for the role. Especially when he saw the expressions of the person and the Yao, he shuddered. The light flashed in Pu Yao's bloody pupil, a cruel smirk on the corner of his mouth, his actions like lightning. Gongsun Shidi, after being depressively killed for 20-something matches, his expression wasn't the least bit dejected. His face was like a plum blossom, slightly flushed, the light in his eyes continuously flickering. He was more excited the more he fought. These two perverts. Suemo had long known of Pu Yao's perverseness. He hadn't thought Gongsun Shidi would also be so perverse when he played war chess. Did everyone's heart have a perverse chord? Shaking his head, Suemo smacked his lips. All the war chess games that Pu Yao gave were for commanders, and were all Yamo. Xiuzhe, if they were not the enemy, they were cannon fodder. That made him very unaccustomed to it. Okay, who made it so that they were war chess games for Yamo? Suemo completely threw the last thought behind his head. He decided to continue his own cultivation. Speaking of cultivation, he was studying formations. He had seen many kinds of formations already. The soul-tethered talisman that was so rare, Jingshi talismans, he had all that. Adding on the aid of his consciousness, his comprehension of formations was much deeper than normal Xiuzhe. He had many skills, he cultivated Ling power, spiritual power, and also body cultivation on the side. He also knew many spells. Such variety was not a good quality. In reality, all of these were not his true cultivation path. His primary cultivation was formations. The direction of this originated in Pu Yao's statement, the core of all spells is formations. From the uncertainty in the beginning, to the gradual understanding, to the rock-hard determination of present, Suemo had never stopped studying. Even though he was far from the level Pu Yao had spoken of, he was full of confidence in himself. For example, the micro-formations in dan-making were the products of his continuous investigations. He didn't know if anyone else studied them, but the micro-formations had brought enormous profit for him. Without the micro-formations, there was no golden crow fire. There were many paths to increasing one's strength, but not every path was suited for him. Since people were skilled at commanding, then this matter will be given to those skilled in that. It was the wisest choice for him to do what he was most skilled in. He put his attention back on the date seed ship. In his view, there was a lot of room for modifications, especially to Suemo who was skilled in micro-formations. As it was related to his life, he had to think hard. In the cabin, 3 people all had different expressions. Chun Yuqing propped his head on his hand, his eyes lost. He had maintained this position for a long time, occasionally muttering. Gongsun Cha was extremely energetic, his eyes focused on war chess, completely ignorant of the piece of black day's crystal that was floating in the air with no one else present. Suemo climbed up and down, his body covered in wood shavings, all kinds of tools and talismans occasionally on his hands. Lilith Pagoda skipped behind him, not letting go of one piece go to waste, all sucked into the tower. Not far away, Silly Bird looked in disdain at Lilith Pagoda. Lilith Black silently waved its antennae as it climbed around. A long time later, when the formation in front of him had finished, Suemo finally released a breath and stretched. Without any requirements, without any limitations, as long as he could think of it and he had enough materials, he would try it. This kind of experimentation that he had never had before made him feel unspeakably comfortable. He had done everything he could think of to modify the date seed ship. Some were forging methods, some were dan-making methods, some were formation-setting methods, including the formation discs that he hadn't used for a time. They were all put to use on the date seed ship. The date seed ship was completely transformed. The shuttle-shaped date seed ship became even sharper, especially the bow where 7 blue spikes were arranged in a row. These 7 blue spikes had been obtained from the 4th-grade blue-spiked crocodile that Suemo had killed on the desolate wood reef. The blue jade-like spike was covered in cinnabar seals all over. The body of the ship was thinner and longer than before, like a swordfish. It made the ship look more dangerous and intrusive. The direct result was that its speed in the water suddenly increased. In 2 hours, it could travel 150 li, having increased by 50%. Zhuemo added a control formation to the Ling shield outside. It was almost attached to the body of the ship now, like a skin rather than the round bubble it had been before. The lightning net seemed to be engraved on the Ling shield now rather than on its exterior. It was possible to see a thread of lightning occasionally swim by silently on the Ling shield. Zhuemo had cut off anything like the masts. Those things were more for decoration than practicality. But even so, Zhuemo was still not satisfied. He studied the water movement formation that the date seed ship had now, and found that this water movement formation was the reason the date seed ship was so slow in the water. Compared to flying in the air, the speed of travel in the water made him feel it was as slow as a turtle. For example, the thunder-flowing light wings that he had bought from Hongyang could reach 1,500 li in 2 hours at full speed. Even the third-grade Lucky Cloud that did not pursue speed but was famed for its elegance could easily surpass a speed of 300 li every 2 hours. Having never possessed a water movement talisman before, Zhuemo naturally could not be satisfied with the speed of the date seed ship. A fourth-grade date seed ship that couldn't even catch up to a third-grade Lucky Cloud, wasn't that a joke? He completely forgot the resistance in the water was much stronger than flying in the air. When he realized this problem, it was when he had increased the speed of the date seed ship to 200 li every 2 hours, because he discovered that, no matter how he altered the water movement formation, he could not increase the speed of the date seed ship. He suddenly recalled a move that he had practiced before in the Li water sword scripture, flowing water. Other than being traceless and hard to discover, flowing water also was fast. It wasn't an extremely fast, but a comfortable, and smooth, natural flow. He had practiced Li water sword scripture in the water before. In the water, flowing water was much faster. The crux of flowing water was to change with the water flow, like water flowing from high up down. If he could turn the date seed ship into the water drop sword, that would be good. This daring idea suddenly flashed through his head. This idea made him excited. After thinking for a long time, he finally found a solution. He had just finished it now. He used several hundred little formations to successfully model a situation similar to flowing water. The speed of the date seed ship was increased to 400 li every 2 hours. Zhuemo did not know the market. If he knew the fourth-grade water movement talismans on the market were all around 100 li every 2 hours, that even the upper fourth-grade talismans were about 200 li every 2 hours, he certainly wouldn't have been stubborn to increase the speed of the date seed ship. Such terrifying speed was not without its limits. Due to the high number of formations, it was extremely difficult to control. Zhuemo found it very hard to control himself, and had to let Lil Pagoda take control of the formations. These formations mostly were related to water, and Lil Pagoda was the best hand at controlling the 5 elements. The other point was the consumption of Jingshi had multiplied, especially when they were traveling at full speed. It would use 10 Jing of Ling power every 2 hours, which was 10 pieces of third-grade Jingshi, 10 times that of the thunder-flowing light wings. But in Zhuemo's perspective, this was worth it. If he couldn't keep his little life, then no matter how much Jingshi he had it was useless. The present date seed ship finally reached the level of life-saving in his heart. But before he could rest, suddenly, a feeling of danger came into Zhuemo's mind. Zhuemo's heart beat heavily. He couldn't help but look outside. In the black water, a dot of light suddenly lit up far away. This dot of light was extremely small like a hair, but in a blink, it was the size of a sesame seed. Such fast speed. Zhuemo inhaled sharply. He suddenly remembered the endless ocean that countless people talked about, which had no border, was the playground of strong Ling beasts. Run! Connected to his mind, Lil Pagoda instantly light up, the Jingshi of the 28 stars in the ceiling of the cabin lit up, the cabin so bright it seemed like day. Vroom vroom vroom. The ship slightly trembled. Under its maximum speed, the pressure that the ship was under was very terrifying. The sudden change alarmed the other two. Chen Yuqing raised his head in confusion. The excited lush on Gong Sun Cha's face had not retreated. Gong Sun Cha reacted first, the lightning speed of the date seed ship frightening him. So fast. When did the ship become this fast? He wasn't nervous, his face curious as he walked next to Zuemo. It isn't the time to discuss this, Zuemo said in a deep voice. Something has locked onto us. What? Gong Sun Cha's face was curious. However, when his gaze turned to the outside, his face suddenly changed. Not far away from the ship, a pair of vicious eyes about the size of a lantern stared at the date seed ship. When the two people looked at its body, the two couldn't help but inhale. An enormous shadow appeared in their vision. Black water that flowed relentlessly was like a mountain that was clearly separate from the surrounding river. The pair of indifferent and vicious eyes were as bright as moons in the black water. The three felt as though they had fell into a glacier, their entire body cold. Chapter 207 Moon-Eye Blackwater Beast, what is that? Gong Sun Cha asked woodenly. Don't know. Zuomo's answer was similarly wooden. The pitiable Chen Yuqing just fainted. This is a moon-eye blackwater beast, Pu Yao drawled. Having just sadistically killed Gong Sun Cha for more than 20 rounds, he was in a pleasurable state, his attitude exceptionally harmonious. Moon-eye blackwater beast. They mostly live in the bottom of the endless ocean. They have large bodies, but they are all looks and no substance. They don't have anything good on their bodies. The only things are the moon beads and the blackwater. Pu Yao only glanced once, before becoming scornful. Moon bead. Blackwater. Zuomo's heart leaped. He had never heard of the moon-eye blackwater beast before, but he wasn't unfamiliar with the moon bead and blackwater. The uses of blackwater were very broad, it was not cheap, and moon beads were not just expensive, there were very few of them on the market, and were some of the best materials for forging. However, he didn't dare to have any greed now. The presence that this moon-eye blackwater beast had was too intimidating. What grade is this guy? Any weaknesses? He asked. 4th grade. As to weaknesses, I don't know. Pu Yao added, I'm not familiar. The speed of the date seed ship was at maximum, yet that moon-eye blackwater beast was easily keeping up. As expected of a natural water element beast. His date seed ship was not a match for this kind of water movement speed. He stopped the ship. In any case, he couldn't escape from the beast. What reassured his heart was this moon-eye blackwater beast was a 4th grade ling beast. What gave him a headache was that they were in the water. Zuemo might have defeated a blue-spiked crocodile, but that was on land and not in the water. If they had been in the water, Zuemo wouldn't have even been able to escape. Water element ling beasts could use all of their offensive power in the water. One ship and one beast faced off. Zuemo and the others didn't dare to move rashly. The moon-eye blackwater beast seemed curious about this object that it had never seen before. Inside the ship, Zuemo cast a spell on Gong Sun Cha. You're in command of them. After playing war chess, Zuemo realized Gong Sun Shidi's talent in this area. Since he really couldn't make anything of them, it was better to give them to Shidi. Gong Sun Cha stilled, but he instantly took over the command of the 3 golden armor guards. In his consciousness, when the 3 golden armor guards appeared, a shocked expression uncontrollably floated onto his face. He had always assumed that the golden armor guards were living people. Now he discovered that these 3 mysterious experts were puppets. He quickly managed to calm down. Gradually, his breathing started to speed up. He felt his body was uncontrollably shaking. It was not fear nor terror, but excitement. This was his first fight where he was in command. Even though his subordinates were 3 golems, when he thought of the upcoming battle, he felt his body temperature rising, even his blood was burning. He suddenly closed his eyes, his rushed breathing slowly calming. When he opened his eyes again, he looked much calmer, but the light in the deepest part of his eyes was like a blade's edge. Suemo also threw away all other thoughts. Other than engaging in a fight, there didn't seem to be other options. The other side was a fourth-grade Ling beast in the water, but on his side were 4 Ningmai. Suemo felt there was a chance. What he was worried about was they would create too much noise, and attract other Ling beasts. That would not be good. Just as Suemo pondered when to attack, Gongsun Cha suddenly ran to Chen Yucheng who had fainted, and furiously shook him awake. Xixiang, where's your Ling butterfly? Ling butterfly, Chen Yucheng's face was confused. After a while, he managed to react, and hurriedly took out the beast service card. Ling butterfly. Gongsun Cha looked helplessly at the confusion and panic on Chen Yucheng's face and could only softly comfort him. Xixiang, don't panic, just summon your Ling butterfly. Oh. It might have been that Gongsun Cha's comfort was effective. Chen Yucheng calmed down slightly and summoned the Ling butterfly. The blue Ling butterfly appeared in front of him, nimbly fluttering its wings. Suemo was slightly surprised. Every time the blue butterfly flapped its wings, he could feel a rich stream of water element power. It seemed that the deep of the endless ocean was the place the water element blue butterfly could be most effective. But Suemo did not understand. Why did Gongsun Cha get Chen Yucheng to summon a blue butterfly? The blue butterfly was only a third-grade Ling butterfly, definitely not a match for the big guy outside. Also, while the deep of the endless ocean had rich water element power, it really was not a habitat for butterflies. Xixiang, I remember your Ling butterfly has 2 water element spells. Which 2? Gongsun Cha asked rapidly. Water movement, and water power. Chen Yucheng reflexively responded. Suemo's eyes suddenly lit up. He understood what Gongsun Shidi wanted to do. Gongsun Cha did not waste time, pointing at the 3 golden armor guards and saying, Xixiang, get the Ling butterfly to use the spells on these 3. Oh. Chen Yucheng hurriedly commanded the blue butterfly. The blue butterfly lightly moved its wings, and 2 water blue spells hit one of the golden armor guards. After continuously casting 8 spells on the 3 golden armor guards plus Suemo, the blue butterfly appeared tired. The wings were moving slower than they had been before. When the 2 spells hit Suemo, he felt his Ling power become lively. The changes in the water flow outside the ship became much more clear, even though he didn't know what the effect would be. It was the correct decision to give Gongsun Shidi control of the golden armor guards. If it was him, he wouldn't have thought of Chen Shidi's Ling butterfly. With these 2 spells, the gap between the 2 sides had become a little bit smaller. Suemo and Gongsun Cha looked at each other, and instantly understood what they wanted. Attack first. 3 blue lights suddenly charged at the Moon-Eye Blackwater beast. Once they attacked, Suemo had no thoughts about luck. The 3 blue spikes moved first. 4th-grade blue spikes, after being forged in golden crow fire, the body of the spikes were filled with characters. It was the strongest killing move of the Date Seed ship, but compared to the enormous body of the Moon-Eye Blackwater beast, the 3 blue spikes were not even toothpicks. The Moon-Eye Blackwater beast did not show any signs of dodging. The 3 blue spikes disappeared into the black and roiling black water. Boom! The black water which had been slowly flowing suddenly rippled ferociously like boiling water. The lantern-sized eyes brightened. Hiss! The 3 people on the ship felt an ear-piercing sound. Suemo's attack had wounded it. The Moon-Eye Blackwater beast was enraged. Everyone felt the landscape darken. A wave of blackwater gathered towards the Date Seed ship from all directions, tying it up tightly. The strength of the black water was extremely high. The ship started to creak as the blackwater pressed against it. The blackwater tightly covered the Ling shield like a wall. Three golden figures with a long red tail heavily struck the water wall outside. Ding ding ding. Three muffled sounds that were like lightning. The three golden armor guards were forcibly bounced back. The seemingly soft-looking black water was as hard as steel. The full power blows of the three golden armor guards were not able to move the moon-eyed blackwater beast. Suemo was shocked. He was very clear about how powerful the three golden armor guards were. Each golden armored guard's strength was above his. The attack of the three of them at full power was not able to harm the moon-eyed blackwater beast one bit. If it was said the three blue spikes made Suemo joyful, then his heart stilled with this attack. So the restless blackwater around the moon-eyed blackwater beast was its strongest weapon. Blackwater was one of the most famous heavy waters in the world. With such a large amount of blackwater it didn't need any other spells. It only needed to control them, and the power would be terrifying. Controlling blackwater. This was the area that the moon-eyed blackwater beast was truly strong in. Gongsun Cha also had a shocked expression. The three golden armor guards suddenly stopped and suddenly leapt outside again. Suemo also managed to react. Throwing all thoughts to the back of his head, the 5 essence sword set he had already prepared was waiting to attack. Suddenly seeing the actions of the three golden armor guards, his own movements slowed. The three golden armor guards rushed outside. In the middle, the gloves on their hands lit up. 10,000 appearance gloves. The three golden figures were like three meteors, striking 3 times. Bam bam bam. The 3 blows were all at the same spot. Boom. Suemo's consciousness clearly watched the water wall that the 3 golden armor guards attacked only slightly rippled, but behind the water shield, the blackwater body of moon-eyed blackwater beast suddenly shook, a portion of the blackwater almost flowing out of its body. Gongsun Cha's attack was too beautiful. Suemo suppressed the impulse to roar, and took the opportunity to attack. He didn't use the 5 essence sword set on his hands, but went with the flow and activated the lightning net outside the Ling shield of the date seed ship. If this was earlier, lightning of this degree was nothing to the moon-eyed blackwater beast. But the clever attacks of the 3 golden armor guards caused the moon-eyed blackwater beast to lose control of the blackwater for a very short instant. The relatively weak lightning moved in at this time. Hiss hiss hiss. Countless little bits of lightning flooded the blackwater. The moon-eyed blackwater beast was in a slight panic. The blackwater that had been wrapped around the date seed ship furiously pressed inwards. Under the heavy pressure, half of the fine lightning was quickly destroyed. However, the state of the two sides switched. The devious Suemo attacked it again, and 3 blue spikes soundlessly entered the blackwater. Arg! The moon-eyed blackwater beast gave a strange howl. Suemo's eyes blurred, everything shaking. Turning his head over, blood flowed out of Gongsun Cha's nose and mouth, his face ferocious. The killing intent was so intense in his eyes that Suemo's heart shook. A red sword energy passed through the black water, aiming straight at the 2 lantern-sized eyes of the moon-eyed blackwater beast. At the same time, another golden armor guard paced several steps and moved up. Bam! The blackwater wall shrunk back, blocking the red sword energy. Pew! The blackwater that hurried back was slightly weaker than usual, unable to block such a sharp sword energy. Another water wall. The sword energy which had not expended its power hit the surface, causing ripples and was blocked. Before the moon-eyed blackwater beast could release a breath, the golden armored guard that had moved up smashed heavily into the wall. An expression of scorn appeared in the vicious eyes of the moon-eyed blackwater beast. Smash! They couldn't smash through the water wall. Just as the golden armored guard was going to hit the wall, suddenly, 7 silver sword energies lit up by his side, the silver light flowing. 7 silver sword energies forcefully crashed on the water wall. The 7-star sword formation of the 7-star sword boots. The rippling water wall instantly collapsed, the the 7 silver sword energies pointing straight at the eyes of the Moon-Eye Blackwater Beast. For the first time, the Moon-Eye Blackwater Beast had an expression of fear. At this time, it could do nothing except push all the Blackwater in front of it. It needed to stop the 7 silver sword energies. It was so panicked that it did not notice that, at some unknown time, a golden figure had sneaked behind it. Face covered in blood, Gongsun Cha seemed insane, the corners of his mouth coldly rising, his eyes black as they were reflected in the Blackwater, a dash of red flashing past. Chapter 208 Blood Void Movements. YMO looked at the soft and shy Gongsun Shidi, who was half collapsed on the deck, face pale, and found it hard to think of him as the battle-crazed guy just now. As he took out medicine for Gongsun Cha, he thought, this guy is really an extreme militant. Even now, he felt it was slightly unreal. The entire battle was clean and crisp, without any big tribulations, it was done. Zhuemo didn't even get to use his 5 essence sword set and the Moon-Eye Blackwater Beast was killed. He had felt the effectiveness of the golden armor guards would not be as great with him as they were on Gongsun Shidi's hands. But the difference was a bit too big. On land, 1 golden armor guard was enough to deal with a Moon-Eye Blackwater Beast, but in the water, for 3 golden armor guards to kill a Moon-Eye Blackwater Beast, that needed luck. He hadn't thought that Gongsun Shidi was so strong. Pity about the pair of moon beads. Zhuemo's heart hurt. The last ambush by the golden armor guard had sliced the eyes of the Moon-Eye Blackwater Beasts in half. What landed in his hands were 4 half-sphere moon beads. Their value had greatly decreased. He had taken a lot of Blackwater. The Blackwater was not as valuable as moon beads, but it was still a rarity. Even more, it was worth it just to discover Gongsun Shidi's terrifying talent at battle. In troubled times, what was most important was strength. As Gongsun Shidi's talents were continuously uncovered, their strength was increasing. Zhuemo was already considering if it was possible for Pu Yao to make a few more golden armor guards. However, Gongsun Shidi's strength was a bit lacking. The shout from the Moon-Eye Blackwater Beast had almost taken his little life. In Zhuemo's view, the direction that Gongsun Shidi should develop in was as a battle general, being skilled at commanding in battle, and not pursuing individual power. But his individual power was too weak, even weaker than Chun Yucheng. If he was the least bit careless, he could lose his life. Having seen the Yao army, Zhuemo naturally realized that people like Gongsun Shidi were actually very strong. These days, hiring a sword xiu of some strength wasn't hard, that just needed Jingshi. But hiring a xiuzhe who would command, that was not simple. Even more, Gongsun Shidi was the closest of all, they had gone through tribulations together and was very reliable. How could he get Gongsun Shidi to command in battle but not lose his little life? Talisman. Even the best talisman would be scrap metal in Gongsun Shidi's hands. He basically could not use them to their full potential. Practice some life-saving spell. At this time, would it be too late? Gongsun Shidi might have talent at commanding, but his talent at cultivation seemed very average. Zhuemo ran into trouble. Suddenly he hit his head. How could he forget Pu Yao? This 1,000-year-old antique should know at least something. You want to turn him into a battle general? Pu Yao's eyes as he looked at Zhuemo were slightly shocked. Such a perceptive matter, was it something that this greedy zombie face could think of? Didn't this guy only ever pursue money? I feel he has great talent in the area. Zhuemo asked in response, don't you think so? His talent is barely acceptable. Pu Yao did not refute it. But what do you want a battle general for? Do you want to start conquering land? Zhuemo looked at Pu Yao like he was looking at an idiot. Did he get his head knocked? Just these few people, they couldn't even get protection money, let alone conquering land. However, thinking that he had something to ask of the other, Zhuemo decided it was better not to say such hurtful words. He said, one good man, 3-person sect. Gang fighting has more technique involved than fighting by oneself. Anyways, I feel that this road has a brighter future for him than a butcher. For some unknown reason, Pu Yao released a breath. See, he said so. This brat couldn't have such far-seeing eyes. This is so good, why does it have to be hidden? Sui Mo was not very happy. You bumpkin. Pu Yao scornfully twisted his mouth. Each time he scolded like this, he felt great. Also, he found that as long as Sui Mo had something to request of him, Sui Mo wouldn't be angry if he swore at him. He saw the displeasure in Sui Mo's eyes become even heavier, but the other forcefully suppressed it. Pu Yao was very smug. Oh, this feeling isn't bad. Let me first teach you a lesson. With Xiuzhe, those that are purely commanders are battle generals. Yaomua do not have pure things. Pu Yao's voice was full of scorn. For Yaomua, they have to fight as soon as they are born. Commanding in battle is a technique any high-level Yaomua must learn. Of course, not every Yaomua can become a strong commander, but the rate of their occurrence is much higher than your battle generals. Do you know what is most important for a commander? Pu Yao asked. I don't know, Sui Mo shook his head in confusion. He had never heard before what Pu Yao was saying now. Giving commands. Pu Yao gave a very normal answer. Oh, Sui Mo seemed to have understood slightly. On the battlefield, the situation would change constantly, and is very complex. How can the people in command let their orders reach their subordinates? As he kept on going, Pu Yao became serious. Xiuzhe use seals, they first forge seals beforehand to give them to the Xiuzhe they command, and pass orders through the seals. Mo use the Mo matrix. They can mutually feel each other through the Mo matrix. As to Yao, I shouldn't have to say anything. Consciousness? Yes. Pu Yao nodded. What Yao primarily cultivate is the consciousness, and are born naturally powerful in this area. You should first consider this problem. As to protecting his life, Pu Yao tilted his head to think, battle generals usually would have the protection of experts, and they would hide in the troops so they cannot easily be discovered. Sui Mo had an impulse to spit blood. After speaking for so long, it was basically equivalent to saying nothing. Having the protection of experts, where could he get experts to protect? There was only these few people, where would he hide? We are on one ship now. Sui Mo's eyes were not friendly as he smirked. I wonder if Sky Yao are nutritious and suited to a Ling beast's appetite. Pu Yao naturally would not be scared by this degree of threat, and laughed loudly in response. Seeing that Sui Mo showed signs of rage, Pu Yao finally stopped his carefree laugh. If you are talking about saving his life, it's not that there are not ways. Pu Yao snickered, like the Mo matrix. Look at how convenient it is. Carving it on once, benefits for a lifetime. He doesn't need to cultivate at all. The Mo matrix would automatically temper his body. In the future, he would be a juggernaut that cannot be killed. Sui Mo smirked. Boast. Continue boasting. Gu got tricked by you last time, got this Mo matrix carved, how come GE didn't become a juggernaut? It's not possible to become a juggernaut in one day. Pu Yao smiled. Or a Yao seed. Cultivating the consciousness, that's the best pairing for a battle general. The consciousness isn't bad, but it isn't useful in protecting his life. Also, if he starts practicing, it would take a long time. Sui Mo shook his head. Also, in the future, he might not be in command of a Yao army. Didn't you also say that Xiuzhe used seals? You see, you refuse the two areas I'm most skilled in. Pu Yao waved his hand, his expression similar to saying, see, it's not that I'm not helping you. Ye just knew that you weren't reliable. Sui Mo hatefully said. Humph, fine. He can't become a battle general, no one can play war chess with you. Pu Yao froze. Sui Mo was secretly overjoyed. As expected, he hadn't guessed wrong. Seeing Pu Yao sadistically kill Gong Sun Cha for 20-something rounds, Zhuo Mo was very shocked. He had never seen Pu Yao be interested in a matter like he was in this. Pu Yao had taken out a huge variety of war chess games. Zhuo Mo had knew then that this guy had definitely been obsessed with this path. Especially when he saw Pu Yao's smug expression after he had sadistically killed Gong Sun Cha 20-something rounds. He knew that this guy had found a new amusement, so he tried this approach. Pu Yao was depressed. It wasn't that he was unclear as to Zhuo Mo's little calculations, but just as Zhuo Mo expected, it had been long and difficult before he had found someone who could play with him. If he lost a person to play with due to this, it was a loss. To a Sky Yao that had no goal or ambition, amusement was very important. He said slightly helplessly, "Oh, I remember, there is a very obscure life-saving method." "What?" Zhuo Mo hurriedly asked. "Blood void movement." "What spell is that?" "It's not a spell, it's a talisman." "Oh." Multiple hours later, Zhuo Mo looked at the 3 necklaces in front of him with a satisfied expression. There were 2 jade tablets on each necklace, each tablet carved with complex and old characters. Zhuo Mo's craftsmanship was much better now, and the characters he carved were more smooth and fine. Deviously laughing, he ran next to Gong Sun Cha whose face was pale. "Xixiang, what is it?" Gong Sun Cha became wary. Xixiang's expression was troubling. "Nothing big." Zhuo Mo nickered. He pulled Gong Sun Cha's hand, rubbed it a few times. "Okay." Gong Sun Cha stilled. He suddenly saw that his little hand was dripping blood. Below his fingers, there was a jade bottle that was already half filled with blood. Gong Sun Cha's pale face suddenly became white as paper, his eyes rolling as he fainted. Chun Yuqing propped up his chin, looking in the distance, his gaze wandering as he muttered to himself. This formation should belong to the wind element power. Does wind element power affect the reproduction rate of ling butterflies? He was completely ignorant that someone was beside him, and did not detect that the other hand which he had on his leg was dripping blood. After half a bottle, he still had not detected it. An hour later. When did my hand get wounded? Oh, where did I think up to? Zhuo Mo took out 3 bottles of blood, one of them his own. He had split the blood of the 2 bottles in half, each portion put into one of the jade tablets. On the warm jade tablet, the bright red characters were exceptionally grand. No one would think of blood. It did not look any different than normal cinnabar. The 3 necklaces with the jade tablets were the weapon to save lives, blood void movement. 3 people, 1 person apiece. When any one of them experienced a life-saving threat, they would automatically move beside their fellow, as long as their fellow was also wearing the blood void movement necklace as well. He had originally planned on finding a life-saving method for Gong Sun Cha who had the lowest cultivation, but hadn't thought that he would get such a big benefit out of it. Zhuo Mo mixed the 3 people's blood void movement together. This way, no matter which one of the 3 of them encountered danger, they would move to one of the other 2. Having handled a large worry, Zhuo Mo's mood was great and he woke Gong Sun Cha up. "Come, let's play the war chess." The confused Gong Sun Cha did not know that he had been sold by Xixiang to a Pu Yao who was sharpening his blades. Chapter 209 Ma Fan, where are we? Chun Yuqing curiously poked his head out of the ship. After traveling for more than 3 months underwater, the 3 felt very suffocated. "Little Mountain Jia," Zhuo Mo said uncertainly. None of them had ever been to Little Mountain Jia and had never paid any attention to information about Little Mountain Jia. The fresh air made the trio's chests instantly become refreshed and expand. They all poked their heads out of the cabin to greedily suck in the air. On both sides of the river were endless series of mountain peaks. But quickly, the 3 completely shut up. They looked dazedly at the mountain peaks at the 2 sides. Smashed rocks and broken trees laid everywhere. Occasionally, there were corpses and pieces of clothing. The mountains which had originally been green were now barren. It can't be this bad, Chun Yucheng's voice drifted out as if it was sleep-talking. Gongsun Cha was the first to respond. His face was not very good, lowering his head and saying to himself, "War has begun." Suemo only looked, not knowing what to say. This area must have experienced fierce fighting. Thinking about the Yao troops above the desolate wood reef, Suemo didn't need to guess to know who had accomplished such destruction. His heart couldn't help but feel fear. If he hadn't escaped in time, this would have also been his outcome. Let's be careful. The road probably won't be safe. Suemo and Gongsun Cha exchanged a look, and saw the worry in each other's eyes. The date seed ship flew into the sky and floated in midair. Where should we go? Gongsun Cha asked a very realistic question. We can only take one step and look one step. Suemo's face was expressionless, but his voice was full of helplessness. We aren't familiar with Little Mountain Jie, so let's first find someone to ask where the other Jie rivers of Little Mountain Jie are. Are there even still people in Little Mountain Jie? Gongsun Cha's words made Suemo's breathing uncontrollably stop. He turned around, and saw a matter-of-fact expression on Gongsun Cha's soft face. For some reason, a cold chill seeped into his heart. His first response was, he definitely could not bully Gongsun Shitty in the future. This guy was definitely vicious and devious. But Suemo clearly wasn't a nice person either. Then our days are at an end. Just wait for others to come back to clean us up. Gongsun Cha giggled, and didn't speak. Holding up his chin, he was thinking of something. Luckily, Gongsun Cha's words were not proven right. On the third day, they encountered living Shuzha. But when they saw the messy battlefield, Suemo could only say, "Let's wait." The date seed ship shrunk back into the clouds, and secretly gazed at the fighting below. The two groups of Shuzha were fighting, talismans and flying swords all over the air. Most of the people had a cultivation of Ningmai, only a rare few in Juji. Chun Yucheng only looked for a little while before turning to think about his husbandry. He wasn't interested in fighting and killing. Suemo and Gongsun Cha were so bored they were yawning. Why don't we do another round of war chess? Gongsun Cha asked. Suemo swept him with a look and shook his head. No, business first. Gongsun Cha had become their strongest offensive force now. In the 3 months, this militant had improved with astounding speed, becoming more vicious and experienced in the art of commanding. The number of Ling beasts that had been ruined could not be counted. In his hands, the 3 golden armored guards could be called specters of war. Of course, Suemo's wallet had also become fuller. Having seen the strong Yao army, having seen the strong Ling beasts under the water like the Moon-Eye Blackwater beast, especially after seeing the grand performances of the 3 golden armor guards under Gongsun Shitty's command, the fight in front of them could not stir their interest. Thinking it over, Suemo still decided to not wait, go get them to stop. Alright, Gongsun Cha clearly didn't have any interest in opponents of this level. The two seemed to have completely forgot one of them was Ningmai and the other Juji, while the 2 groups down there were mostly Ningmai. The 3 golden armor guards that had been holding their swords moved, and disappeared from Gongsun Cha's side. Ma Fan carefully maintained his distance from the others. 50 zhang to 100 zhang was his best attack range. In this range of distance, his sword scripture could reach its maximum power. Compared to the great majority, his luck was pretty good, and he had found the remains of a sword scripture. This sword scripture did not have a name, and the contents were nearly all lost, but the remains were enough for him to survive until now. It really was troublesome. He carefully controlled his rhythm, occasionally glancing out of the corner of his eye at his fellows. Luckily, this group's situation wasn't bad. His heart relaxed slightly. Before this, he had always been alone. When he had encountered the Yao army passing by, seeing that battle that had no meaning, he understood that it was not possible for one person to survive in these troubled times. He had joined this little group. But how many times had he fought after joining this group? He didn't quite remember. After the Yao army left, Little Mountain Jie's society had collapsed and turned to chaos. Out of nowhere, he saw 3 golden lights out of the corner of his eye. There was an ambush. His heart shocked, he didn't hesitate in turning and running. His feet moved continuously, and his entire person was covered in a pile of fake and real illusions. The illusory movement method that he relied on to save his life. The opponent 60 zhang away from him had suddenly lost his opponent, his face full of shock, not understanding the situation. The 3 golden lights were like 3 sharp arrows that pierced straight into the people fighting. Pia pia pia. The rapid blows sounded out like rain hitting a banana leaf. The sounds rang in Ma Fan's ears as he ran furiously, his scalp prickled. It was troublesome now. He was still quite confident in his speed. The sword scripture that he cultivated might have been incomplete, but the strongest parts were the illusory movement method and the 3 sword moves. The illusory sword method had saved his life a few times already. He rejoiced inside that he had luckily saved some energy before. Otherwise, he would meet his death today. Just as he was thinking, the thundering crashes suddenly stopped. A strong feeling of danger appeared. Oh! Hiss crack. A golden figure appeared in front of him out of thin air, the speed so quick that he didn't even manage to see the person's features. Troublesome. His feet changed direction and ran in another direction. Hiss crack. Another golden figure appeared in front of him. Trouble. At the same time, a hiss crack sounded behind him. I surrender. He raised both of his hands. However, the other clearly did not pay attention to him. His neck hurt, his vision darkened, and then he was unconscious. When he opened his eyes again, he released a breath. He hadn't died. However, when he completely opened his eyes, his heart went back up again, a gold fighter. He suddenly remembered what had happened before he was unconscious. This was really troublesome now. He finally managed to see what the golden people looked like. Their entire body was covered in golden scale armor. Under the sun, the dense golden scales rippled with golden light. The eyes under the golden scale armor were cold and murderous. Ma Fan did not doubt that if he dared to make a wrong move, the golden scale warriors would use that exaggeratedly large flame red broadsword to slice off his head. Wait, heavens! His eyes blanked for an extremely short moment. Flames surrounded the exaggerated red broadsword. The golden-scaled warriors had thrust the sword into the ground. The soil around the tip of the sword slowly became black. 4th grade. This was a 4th grade broadsword. Ma Fan had worked alone for so long. From this experience, he had developed a great understanding of the market for these kinds of things. Naturally had his own methods for judging talismans. This broadsword was not ordinary. This was not what shocked him. Even if there was the addition of the golden-scaled armor that looked to have high defense power, he wouldn't feel shocked. What shocked him was what was on the 3. No wonder they could catch up to him. The thunder-flowing light wings, one of the most famous 4th grade flying talismans that could be brought on the market. It had appeared countless times in his dreams. If he had the thunder-flowing light wings, if they were added to his illusory movement method. Oh, he had the confidence he could escape from any Xiuzha under Jin Dan. His eyes flashed across the hands resting on the hilt of the sword. A light blue pair of gloves embroidered with a little elephant. 10,000 appearances gloves. The best love of body show. If you had those, you could tear animals apart with your bare hands. His thoughts wandered. A moment later, he remembered the crashes that had come behind him before he had become unconscious. To have been smashed by a guy wearing 10,000 appearances gloves. He shook and woke up. But when his eyes flashed across the snake pupil that was so cold and emotionless on the belt that the golden-scaled warriors were wearing, his body uncontrollably tensed again. Snake pupil belt. His eyes unconsciously landed on the pair of feet closest to him. The slightly delicate boots were slightly strange being paired with the glittering golden armor. But, when Ma Fan's gaze landed on the little sword on the shoes and the Big Dipper surrounding it, he only had one thought in his head: it really was troublesome now. Don't just look. Just sit up. A very young voice came from behind him. He hurriedly rolled up. He saw an expressionless face. It really was expressionless. The entire face seemed to be paralyzed. He had never seen such a strange face before. The thin body, with this wooden face, it looked like a zombie. However, this zombie was covered in valuable talismans. Ma Fan instantly woke up. He had heard before that many elders would have all kinds of strange habits and preferences. But the young Shouja next to the zombie was quite delicate, a slight smile on his face. He looked very friendly. What are you called? The zombie opened. Ma Fan. As in troublesome? Having expected the other's response, Ma Fan hurriedly explained, Ma as in sesame, Fan for ordinary. Oh, the zombie slightly paused. Why are you guys fighting? Suemo pretended to be profound. Elder, they want to steal our Ling grains. Ma Fan didn't dare to conceal. Ling grains? Suemo was very surprised. He had made his living from farming Ling grains for several years but had never heard people fighting over Ling grains. Yes. Ma Fan perceptively detected the disbelief in Suemo's voice and explained, Elder may not know. After the Yao army passed through, for some reason, the Ling energy in the Jia has gradually decreased. Not only has cultivation has become difficult to progress, but after a period of time, our stages may actually go down. Suemo hurriedly channeled his Ling power and found that it was as Ma Fan had said. The surrounding Ling energy was very thin. He had the Mo matrix which would automatically take in Ling energy from the surroundings, which was why he had not detected it. Also, Dong Sun Cha was obsessed with war chess and Chun Yucheng with his animals. The golden armor guards did not need to cultivate, so their procession had not discovered the change in the Ling energy. Suemo suddenly shuddered in shock. Chapter 210 Collapse of Order. For the longest time, Ling grains had always been used to improve the body and as an aid to increase cultivation speed. Other than that, only those Shouja who were heading to Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia would use them. Due to this, the price of Ling grains was low and very steady in the long term. Otherwise, Suemo would have already become rich. But right now, the Ling energy density at Little Mountain Jia had become low, and the importance of Ling grains had instantly become evident. Jingshi, Lingdan and Ling grains were the only items able to supply Ling energy. The Ling power contained in Jingshi was rich, but the impurities it contained needed to be purified and could not be used in the long term. Lingdan was made with all kinds of Ling herbs and Ling materials, so the cost was too high. The Ling energy in the Ling foods were not just easy to absorb but did not harm the body. If used for a long time, it could even slowly change the body. Ling grains were the most widely used and basic ingredient in Ling foods. Even normal Shouja that did not know how to make Ling food could easily consume it. Many thoughts appeared in Suemo's head. Little Mountain Jia's Ling energy had become thin after the Yao army had passed through. Without a doubt, it was the fault of the Yao army. However, even though he knew this desolation was caused by the Yao army, Suemo had to sigh with amazement at the strength of the Yao army. Little Mountain Jia might be a small Jia, but to be able to change the Ling energy of a Jia, this power was enough to make him look up with reverence. Other than admiration, he started to think of the related problems this matter would cause. Long ago when he had been farming Ling grains, due to listening to the sound tablet frequently, he gradually learned how to follow the threads through the complex and numerous news reports to find the useful information. He knew he was only a little character. If he was going to survive in this troubled world, he needed to learn how to avoid dangers. If the situation worsened, Little Mountain Jie would become a place like Bloody Sky Metropolis Jie. A place with no Ling energy was a terrible place for Xiuzhe, and Little Mountain Jie would quickly become the playground of the Yaomo. Zuomo didn't know what the Yaomo had done, nor did he know if the change of Ling energy could be reversed. If this change could be reversed, that would be good, but if it could not be, then the situation of the Xiuzhe would be terrible. Under an environment without any Ling energy, the offensive power of the Xiuzhe would dramatically lessen, and the Yaomo would become fish in the water. If this became the case, the disadvantages of the Xiuzhe would continuously increase. The Yaomo would only need to corrode one Jie at a time, and the Xiuzhe had to retreat. Damn it! Zuomo felt his heartbeat was increasing. Alright, he was worrying for nothing. Those large sects wouldn't stand aside. Thousands of years ago, the Xiuzhe had won over the Yaomo. They could do it again this time. Zuomo comforted himself so. His thoughts turned back to himself. The great affairs of the world were nothing to him. It was more practical to focus more his efforts on his little life. The price of Ling plant farmers was going to grow. At least, he didn't have to worry about starving. This thought flashed through his head. The order of Little Mountain Jie would completely collapse. He had to quickly leave this place. He had deeply experienced the ineffectiveness of individual strength on the front lines of battle. He couldn't affect the battle, he couldn't even decide his own life. In troubled times, lives were nothing. Ma Fan's heart was fearful. The zombie elder had become silent. He felt the air in front of him had solidified, an invisible pressure making him tremble. He could clearly hear the increasing rate of his heartbeat. His mouth was drying. Why don't you all leave Little Mountain Jie? The zombie elder suddenly asked. Zuomo finally spoke, and Ma Fan no longer felt he was suffocating. Elder, it's not that we do not want to leave Little Mountain Jie, but the Jie River toward Sky Water Jie has been under someone's control. If we want to pass, we needed to pay enough Jingshi and Ling grains. Zuomo instantly realized. He couldn't help but think that these people were much more vicious than he was. Little Mountain Jie only had two Jie rivers, one to Sky Moon Jie, one toward Sky Water Jie. Blockading the Jie River toward Sky Water Jie, Little Mountain Jie instantly became a dead end. No one would dare to go to Sky Moon Jie. No one has tried to kill their way out. Ma Fan grimaced. Controlling the Sky Water Jie River is the strongest sect in the Jie, Clear Sky sect. Hearing this, Zuomo shook his head. This wasn't the way to do business. To do business, there was a relationship of mutual gain. What was traded was Jingshi, but what this Clear Sky sect wanted was lives. Half of the responsibility for the collapse of order in Little Mountain Jie could be blamed on Clear Sky sect and what they were pushing from the shadows. The Xiuzhe that could not escape Little Mountain Jie and could only continuously fight and steal both Jingshi and Ling grains from other people. Everyone would think that when they had stolen enough, they could escape this place. As for the people remaining, there was only one outcome. Zuomo didn't feel anything guilt about profiteering from war, but what Clear Sky sect had done was enough for him to feel cold. Clear Sky sect's actions of pushing people to the edge of death was like playing with fire. If they were not careful, they could also fall in. However, from the outside, it was also possible to see their absolute confidence. Of course, Zuomo was not so carefree as to worry about the life and death of other people. Clear Sky sect was blockading the Jie River, and so was stopping their road to leave Little Mountain Jie. Would Clear Sky sect allow him to leave? Not possible. Clear Sky sect had no relationship with him. Would they let go of the chance to get rich? As to making it through by force? That was even more unlikely. Gong Sun Cha might have been very relaxed in directing the Golden Armor Guards to sort out the 10 or so Xiuzhe, but the power that large sects like Clear Sky sect had was not something so few people that they had could face. Give Jingshi. Mo did have Jingshi, but he felt that in other people's eyes, he was definitely a fat sheep. If it was him who saw such a fat sheep, there was no reason not to squeeze everything he could. How could they be content with just Jingshi? Mo quickly vetoed that plan. Then, there was only one remaining way: kill his way through them. If he was going to kill, it wasn't possible with just the three of them. Then, he needed to expand the strength he had. He needed a power that the other could not dismiss. Clear Sky Sect definitely would not get in a conflict with him to the point both sides were wounded and suffered significant losses. It was very simple. Mo had nothing, but Clear Sky Sect was waiting and raking in Jingshi. Ma Fan would never think that his few words had caused so many thoughts to flash through Mo's mind. Mo asked for some of the general information regarding Sky Water Jie River. As expected, the Sky Water Jie River was unable to be penetrated under Clear Sky Sect's management. It also killed off his last hope. Originally, he had thought about passing under the water of the Jie River by the Date Seed ship. Mo was going to ask Gongsun Shidi's opinion, but when he saw Gongsun Shidi's excitement and fanaticism, he already knew the answer. This extreme militant. Muttering inside, he found Pu Yao. Is there a way to make them listen to me? Pu Yao's bloody pupil flashed and he snickered. There's very many. What you Shouja use the most is Jinji. Jinji? Mo asked curiously. This isn't strange. Pu Yao said. This is mostly used on show slaves, but some strict sects would use them on their disciples to stop the disciples from betraying them. So scary. Mo shook. He could not imagine that he needed to be implanted with Jinji when he entered a sect. Do you want that method? Yes. Mo only hesitated for a beat before deciding to take it. If it wasn't their death, it was his. There was nothing to say. First, get past the Jie River. Jinji were not moral, but it was the most effective method right now. There was no time for him to waste. Mo didn't want to be still in Little Mountain Jie when the Yao army returned. Pu Yao was strangely brisk this time, teaching Mo several kinds of Jinji. It was not that easy to use Jinji, especially to Mo who was only first straight Ningmai. He spent some effort before he barely managed to learn it. This was due to his exceptional consciousness. Otherwise, Jinji were not something he could use. The pitiful Ma Fan became the first experiment. Just as Mo was trying his best to put down Jinji on the unconscious Shouja, Pu Yao revealed an amused expression in the sea of consciousness. You must also have great anticipation. His chin was propped up in his hand, his eerie bloody eye deep as a bloody sea, as he lightly said to the gravestone. So practical. Really makes one admire him more and more. He is destined not to walk your path, you stupid self-destructive fucker. The gravestone was silent and motionless. When the last Jinji was put in, Mo was exhausted. He put Jinji in all the Ningmai. In total, there were 16 people. The remainder is all down to you. Finishing, Mo, whose consciousness and Ling power had all been used up, instantly took a piece of Jingshi and entered meditation. No problem. Gongsun Cha raised his handsome and feminine face, smiling and revealing his teeth. An excited light was in his eyes. At the side, Ma Fan felt a burst of coldness start at his tailbone and climb up his spine. Sky Moon Jie, Desolate Wood Reef. Miss, Yenyu of the 13th Corps has already reached the Jie River towards Bright Wave. The Jin Bao Zheng of the 6th Corps has reached the Jie River to South Beauty Jie. On the road, the two troops have not found any suspicious targets. The middle-aged man respectfully reported. They've moved pretty quickly. Moo, she said faintly. The net has already been cast. The remainder is to slowly search. Be more attentive. Yes. The middle-aged person sternly responded. He hesitated, and then said, Miss, we've found signs of MO activity. Mo. At the side, Yan Feng's expression changed slightly, and he shouted. Mu Shi's gaze slightly narrowed. She raised her head to ask, have they determined who it is? To be able to go through the blood Jia cracks, it can only be Mo under Brigadier. The shock on Yan Feng's face did not disappear. Which Moon Mo Colonel? Why did he come? Does he have the same goal as us? Why is it not possible? Mu Shi glanced at Yan Feng. You've missed a possibility. For example, a true Mo brigadier that has sealed their own power. The face of the middle-aged person changed. Instantly make an investigation. Mu Shi said decisively. Even if he is a true Mo brigadier, do not worry. It would be best to establish communication with him. Maybe he could help us. Yes, the middle-aged man accepted his orders. Seeing the worry on her subordinate's face, Mu Shi smiled. Don't worry too much, no matter if it is a Moon Mo Colonel, or a true Mo brigadier, they have the same enemy as us. Mu Shi's features could only be called clean, but this smile seemed to have a special power to make others calm down. Miss is right, the middle-aged man said with a smile. Chapter 211 Trash and Poor Ghosts. Mo looked at the dozen or so unfamiliar faces in front of him. Some of the people were terrified, but more of them were rebellious. He was thinking about ways that he could control this group. Presently, Little Mountain Jia was like a cage, a gladiator stadium. The surviving Xiuzha were not average. From today onwards I am your boss, the big boss. Zhuo Mo's opening did not stir any reaction. Scorn was in most people's eyes. Zhuo Mo had just a one-straight Mingmai cultivation. In front of these people, he didn't have any qualities that he could be proud about. Zhuo Mo didn't pay any mind to this, and kept on speaking. I believe you have all had a taste of the Jinji. I don't want to spend more time talking. My goal is very simple, to go through the Jie River. As for you trash and poor ghosts, you have nothing to be squeezed out, so I don't have much interest in you. The words were nasty to hear, but many people's wariness lowered. The expressionless person in front of them did have the qualification to say this. That date seed ship was clearly a rare Jingshi talisman's, row of 7 cinnabar pattern blue spikes as sharp as teeth, clearly from an crocodile maw. They could smell faint traces of blood from the teeth. The long and elegant body of the ship was surrounded by a Ling shield that occasionally flashed with lightning as it wrapped tightly around the ship. Each person couldn't help but drool when they saw the grand talismans and flying swords the 3 golden armor guards were wearing. If it wasn't that they had Jinji in their bodies, these people who have leapt at the opportunity regardless of the risk. Even the richest person in the group was too embarrassed to open his 100 treasures pouch when facing such a grand scene. I hope everyone can have happy interactions. Of course, with your present skill level is hard to make me happy. Zhuo Mo was full of scorn and disdain. Look at all of you fighting so messily, even worse than wandering bandits, no finesse at all. From today onwards you all have to remember one thing. Gang fighting requires high finesse and is skilled work. You are all very lucky. Zhuo Mo pointed at Gongsun Cha beside him. Mr. Gongsun here, is the best and most famous battle general of Sky Moon Jia. He will personally teach you this profound skill. Gongsun Cha smiled shyly, but his face didn't blush at all. Chun Yuqing gaped. This boast was somewhat. When the other people's eyes landed on Gongsun Cha, all the scorn and disdain completely flew away, only leaving behind terror. Very good, Zhuo Mo was extremely content. It seemed that Gongsun Shidi had already established enough authority with these people. Just like when one did business, after pushing for the lowest price, he needed to give the other an incentive to motivate the other person. You will be completely transformed, and you will begin a completely different life here. You do not need to worry about ambushes in the middle of the night, you do not need to think about where to escape for safety. Zhuo Mo waved his arms, you don't need to worry about anything. The only worry you need to have is whether or not you can satisfy Mr. Gongsun. Zuemo made the last conclusion in an unconcerned tone. The Jie River will fall under our feet. Zuemo, feeling very good about himself, moved the group to the side as he and Gongsun Cha started to discuss. How long would it take to train these people to have offensive power? Zuemo asked Gongsun Cha. Don't know, Gongsun Cha spread his hands, we are all novices. Zuemo had a headache. Gongsun Shidi was right. Everyone here were novices, no one had any experience. Gongsun Cha added, according to the rules of the wargame, a new troop needs to be trained for over a year to form the most basic offensive maneuvers. Also, the wargames you made were all Yaoma style, not Shouja, so I have to slowly experiment. We don't have that much time, Zuemo shook his head. He didn't believe the Yaoma would give them a year. Gongsun Cha thought for a moment, then we can only increase the intensity of the training, or there are ways that we can use numbers to make up for lack of power. Numbers, it seems that we need a temporary base, Zuemo said solemnly. Zuemo chose a mountain valley. Before, there was a little sect here, but the people had left, so the valley did not belong to anyone. The reason he chose this place was because there were Ling veins here before. The reason that the Ling energy of Little Mountain Jia had become thin was definitely due to a problem with the Ling veins. Zuemo wanted to personally see what the Ling veins had become. They had encountered several groups along the way, which they completely taken down. At the beginning, it was the Golden Armor Guards. Later, Gongsun Cha commanded the Shouja they had just imprisoned. Compared to the high efficiency of the 3 Golden Armor Guards, these Ningmai Shouja of average strength were extremely inefficient. The novice Gongsun Cha also made many mistakes, but he was not discouraged. Zuemo knew that it couldn't be rushed, so he slowed down. In any case, there was still the Golden Armor Guards and the Date Seed ship in reserve. He didn't need to worry about the problem of safety. It was hard to find the chance for battle. If he didn't use it, it was really a waste. Gongsun Cha quickly displayed his talent as a commander. Going from the complete chaos at the beginning to a full-fledged organization, took only a span of 10 days. Over the span of more than 10 days, the troop had quickly expanded to 40 people. 28 Ningmai, 12 Zhuji. Zuemo quickly discovered that setting down Jinji was not harmless. Each Jinji required him to put a bit of his consciousness inside the body of the other. Each Jinji's Zuemo set would weaken his consciousness. This was not something that could be avoided. There were no free meals in this world. It was only a weirdo like him that could even set Jinji before he reached Jindan. Luckily, they did not meet large groups of Shouja on the road. According to Ma Fan, there were countless little groups in Little Mountain Jia, and several that were several hundred strong. Zuemo found it strange why the larger groups did not attack the Jie River. Later, he found out the Clear Sky sect that guarded the Jie River was supported by a Jindan. Zuemo was frightened. No wonder the Clear Sky sect had the confidence to monopolize the Jie River. They had a Jindan at their back. This information instantly made Zuemo reconsider the difficulty of breaking through the Jie River. Ningmai had 3 strata. The most important difference was the difference in the amount of Ling power inside the body. The peak of the first stratum, Ling power was about 10 Jing. The peak of the second stratum was approximately 30 Jing, and the peak of the third stratum would shoot up to 90 Jing. Of the 28 Ningmai subordinates that Zuemo had, only 3 had reached the second stratum. The remainder were all first stratum Ningmai. Usually, a Ningmai third stratum could individually deal with 10 first stratum Ningmai, or 3 second stratum Ningmai. Of course, this was in theory. Real life was more complex, when taking into account spells, flying swords, talismans, and offensive tactics. But if a Ningmai faced a Jindan, they could only escape. What counterattack? Winning by pitting the weak against the strong, it definitely could not appear. The difference between Jindan and Ningmai was not just the difference in Ling power, but also the difference in understanding Ling power. During the process of entering Jindan, Xiuzhe would experience a deeper comprehension of the world and Ling power. The same spell before and after Jindan would be drastically different in power. The only way that Ningmai could face Jindan was to overwhelm them with numbers. As to how many people were needed for victory, both Sui Mo and Gongsun Cha didn't know. Sui Mo could only ask Pu Yao. Gang fighting? That isn't easy to say. Pu Yao rubbed his chin. It depends on the skill of the other side, their talisman, and the cooperation of your side. If it was those Yao soldiers? Sui Mo asked. If it's a normal Jindan, then a troop of 100 knight stock Yao. If the quality of the commander is not too bad, there shouldn't be a problem, Pu Yao mused. Sui Mo released a breath. Good, at least it wasn't completely hopeless. He naturally knew that the group of people he had could not reach the skill level of the Yao army, but he could expand in numbers. If 100 people did not work, then 200, 300. What he was most worried about was that even numbers would not be enough to make up for the difference. Why is the Ling energy of Little Mountain Jia becoming thin? Sui Mo asked Pu Yao. There are many possibilities, like Yao worms that eat Ling or black line mushrooms. Eating Ling is a characteristic of Yamo. Is there a way to reverse it? You can request someone that is at least Yuanying to act, and wait 10 years for recovery. Yuanying, Sui Mo was speechless. The strongest Xiuzhe that he had encountered up until now was in Jindan. To renew the Ling veins, it actually needed Yuanying. That was a death sentence. Something only someone in Yuanying could accomplish, Sui Mo didn't feel he had any chance of success. However, he still decided to establish his base in this mountain valley. The environment around it was good. Sui Mo received a large number of Yamwa military training methods from Pu Yao and dumped them on Gongsun Cha. Pu Yao was actually kind enough to remind Sui Mo those were old antiques from thousands of years ago, and they should only be used as a reference. Sui Mo was amused to Pu Yao's sudden change in attitude. But when Pu Yao drew out the earth energy, Sui Mo, who had become unfamiliar after a period of time, instantly experienced what was life worse than death. Even though he knew it was beneficial for his body, he still wanted to cry. Drawing out the earth energy, when would it end? Ma Fan nervously stood in front of Gongsun Cha. In his eyes, the delicate and shy young master's deviousness was enough for any Yaomua to die of humiliation. No one dared to disobey his commands. Even the most vicious and rebellious of them all, Lei Peng, was as docile as a kitten in front of him. Perform every skill you know once. Do not leave anything out. Gongsun Cha's order was not complicated. Yes, Ma Fan slowly learned how to live under Gongsun Cha's command. It was very simple. What Gongsun Cha said, then he would do it. If he managed to complete the demand, then everything was wonderful. Ma Fan started to perform his spells one by one. Luckily, he had no sect or family. He only knew so many spells and quickly finished performing. Gongsun Cha was very interested in his illusory movement method and the 3 sword moves, and had made him repeat them several times. Ma Fan had been very worried. What if Big Boss wanted his sword scripture, and wanted him to give it up? However, he quickly found his worry was unwarranted. After Gongsun Cha recorded it down, he was sent back to training. On the second day, Ma Fan trembled as he took a jade scroll the smiling Gongsun Cha handed him. After just one look, his little face was the color of dirt. Chapter 212 Goat is pragmatic. Pu Yao felt this was extremely amusing. Truthfully, he had been in Sui Mo's sea of consciousness for this long, and there hadn't been one thing that was amusing as what was happening right now. In the thousands of years he lived, he had not encountered something more amusing than this. A Zhuji Xiuzhe who had never studied anything in the area, he was also a butcher, had started to study how to become a battle general. He had never heard of something like this, even during the Great War from thousands of years ago. He was very familiar with battle generals. In the camp of Xiuzhe, without almost any exception, there were two ways that battle generals were trained. The first was a battle general that was specifically nurtured by large sects, and the other were battle generals that underwent countless battles and had gradually comprehended the skills. The majority were from the first method. In that 1,000-year war, almost 70% of the famous battle generals in the Xiuzhe camp had been from the large sections. They learned all kinds of knowledge from when they were young. Even the spells they learned were specialized to command in battle. The second kind was the other 30%. In reality, if one considered all battle generals and not only the famous generals, the difference would be larger. Not having been taught from birth and having to climb up step by step from the lowest level, battle generals formed by the second method were all geniuses. The price they paid were much higher than the first kind. It looked as though that Gongsun Cha had great hope to become one of those. Yet reality was always cruel. Being of low status and wanting to become a battle general, these individuals had to meet one condition: having great individual power. Disregarding the talent to command, the battle generals that were the second kind had talent in cultivation that was comparable to any other Xiuzhe. The reason was very simple. If they had no strength, they would not survive through battle. If they couldn't survive, how could they climb up? Wanting to become a battle general but being of low status, they had to repeatedly climb over mountains of corpses, in order to accumulate fame and experience. Then there would be compliance to his orders. No one in little groups of 7 or 8 would be willing to put their lives in the hands of an individual that could die anytime, much less larger troops. This was also why Pu Yao thought that Gongsun Cha hadn't had a chance. Gongsun Cha was only a butcher, a Zhuji butcher. Pu Yao could easily see that Gongsun Cha's talent in cultivation was very average. Even if he had many lingdan and talismans, he wouldn't accomplish too much in cultivation. But Pu Yao did not immediately dismiss his ability to become a battle general, even if he had to learn on his own. The most important reason was Suo Mo's support. His talent wasn't in question. If Gongsun Cha had been in a large sect from birth, and he ultimately became a battle general, Pu Yao would not find it strange. After playing war chess for so many days, Gongsun Cha had improved quickly. What really surprised him was that Suo Mo trusted Gongsun Cha so much. Even Pu Yao had to admit that Suo Mo's eyes were wondrously accurate. In his mind, Suo Mo's talent wasn't bad, but it definitely wasn't the best. However, over these 2 years, even with the stumbling and tripping, Pu Yao found to his shock that Suo Mo's progress was far outside of his predictions. Part of it was that he had been involved, but the speed of improvement of core disciples from large sects would rarely reach Suo Mo's level, and they would receive more aid than Suo Mo. But Suo Mo's physical talent really could not be called great. This was what Pu Yao marveled at. As he kept on thinking about it, Pu Yao felt that it was all caused by Suo Mo's viewpoint. Suo Mo's viewpoint and mentality were very strange, and very different from normal people. No matter if it was cultivation, battle, or interpersonal relationships. It was easy for others to see him as the classical utilitarian. Clever, greedy, and money-grubbing, but he would sometimes do something that Pu Yao would find stupid and irrational. Yet these idiotic actions would usually produce good results. Originally, Pu Yao did not have a good opinion of Gongsun Cha's prospects, but considering Suo Mo, he was suddenly filled with interest and anticipation. It was so amusing. Compared to Pu Yao's attitude of idling and watching from the sidelines, Suo Mo was so busy his feet never touched the ground. He had been nagged by Chun Yucheng to the point that he had to build a beast pool. They wouldn't stay for very long in Little Mountain Jia, but it wouldn't be too short. If they used the time well, they could produce a few batches of ling beasts. Chun Yucheng had been studying for a long time on the date seed ship, and he had many ideas. However, without the beast pool, all ideas were nothing. Shi Xiao, build a beast pool. Chun Yucheng's words were like a ghost haunting Zhuo Mo's ears constantly. After repeated requests, Zhuo Mo complied. His wealth was large. A beast pool was expensive, but not too expensive. However, the work was not easy. No one could help him, especially when Chun Shidi had a pile of ideas he wanted to suggest. To realize these ideas, he needed to modify the beast pool. The modifications meant that the work he had to do increased dramatically. It meant that he needed to reconstruct it. Even more, Chun Yucheng Shidi's ideas would occasionally change. Each time Zhuo Mo wanted to slack off, Chun Yucheng's haunting voice would float to him again. Shi Xiao, just change a bit, just change a bit. When the beast pool was finished, it was like there was a pin in Zhuo Mo's behind. He ran away as far as possible. When an obedient person started to torture other people, it would make them feel hopeless. Chun Yucheng Shidi began to work on the beast pool, Gongsun Shidi was working on the group of Xiuzhe, and Zhuo Mo started to work on himself. His studies into formations needed a large amount of time. He also added another job for himself. He found the Ling vein, and gathered some of the black line mushrooms that ate Ling. He was very interested in them. Other than that, cultivation was something that could not be missed. His consciousness had shrunk dramatically after setting down the Jinji. Thinking about the tactic of battle by relying on numbers, he deeply felt that increasing his consciousness was his most important priority at the moment. Embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation became something he needed to do every day. After his consciousness manifested, his sea of consciousness transformed. The enchanting flames in the sea of consciousness had disappeared. The number of stars in the sky had increased to 10. The sword river still was the same. He had not increased his sword essence. Looking at the stars in the sea of consciousness, Zhuo Mo suddenly recalled the time that he forged Lil Pagoda, and the stardust that the stars had produced which continuously permeated his consciousness. In the void above his consciousness, the 10 stars hung. Other than the one star that was somewhat bright, the rest were dim. Thinking about the speed that the stars sprayed out stardust, Zhuo Mo felt it would take years for the stardust to permeate all of his consciousness. That is star source. Pu Yao sat on the gravestone and raised his head to look at the 10 stars above his head. What is star source? This question had always been buried in Zhuo Mo's mind. Seeing that Pu Yao seemed to have intentions of explaining today, he played along and asked. Star source is the origin of the spiritual power, Pu Yao slowly said. You can also think of them as the crystals formed from Ling power. Don't you Xiuzhe like to talk about how many Jing of Ling power? 10 star spiritual power? Zhuo Mo asked in response. Or you can see them as the springs that birth spiritual power. 10 stars mean that you have 10 springs that can produce spiritual power. One time, I saw that these stars could spray out silver star dust. What is that? Zhuo Mo couldn't help but ask in curiosity. What did you say? Pu Yao suddenly opened his bloody pupil, his spine straightening, changing from his lazy attitude. Zhuo Mo feels slightly terrified under Pu Yao's bloody gaze. Inside, he wondered if the other had started to go crazy again. Is something wrong? Zhuo Mo weakly asked. After a beat, he saw Pu Yao say dazedly, the second consciousness. He forcefully shook his head as he refocused. He looked deeply at Zhuo Mo. The stardust that you saw is a purer form of spiritual power. We usually call it spirit dust. These 10 stars, bright and dull, are different. The brightest star can produce the most star spirit dust. The speed that it produces spiritual power is the fastest. Zhuo Mo didn't really understand. Pu Yao didn't attend to him, and kept on talking. What Yao cultivate are the laws of the world. All objects in the world all contain the laws of the world, all objects in the world can cultivate their spirit. Stars are just one of them. The path of the stars is profound and cryptic. There are very few Yao that walk the path of star spirit cultivation. Hearing this, Zhuo Mo suddenly had a slightly bad premonition. What spirit cultivation are you? What I chose is Sky Fire Spirit Cultivation. Pu Yao smiled, his teeth showing. Zhuemo interjected, then why am I Star Spiritual Cultivation? Because what you cultivate is, embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation, Pu Yao snickered. I hadn't thought that this, embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation, is actually a star spirit cultivation. I was fooled by the name. He muttered in a small voice, I had expected it was trash, hadn't thought that it was actually high level, such a loss, and fire suddenly shot up from Zhuomo's heart. He was enraged, pointing at Pu Yao's nose as he swore. You trash, you gave something you hadn't tested for Yi to cultivate. You actually wanted to use trash to con Yi, Yi isn't finished with you, don't be like this. Pu Yao wasn't angry, and said, chuckling, in any case, you didn't lose. Look, you even managed to cultivate to 10 stars. In 2 years, you've gotten to manifestation. This speed is very fast. Zhuemo pointed, hearing Pu Yao's heartless words became so angry his finger trembled. Do you want to know how to cultivate next? Seeing the situation, Pu Yao crisply turned to temptation. Yes, Zhuemo did not hesitate in answering, all his anger flying away. Pu Yao was not shocked in the slightest by Zhuomo's 180-degree turn in attitude. This guy was very pragmatic. That's right. Pu Yao smiled. I can tell you, and I can give you even more help. But I have a small request. Say it. Zhuoemo was very familiar with Pu Yao's conduct as well. I want the golden core of the Jindan of Clear Sky sect. Zhuoemo was dumbstruck. When he managed to respond, he instantly jumped up. Are you crazy? Jindan. Go get it yourself if you want it. Run to a little Ningmai like myself to say you want the golden core of a Jindan, humph humph, the other can turn me to dust with one slap. Finishing, he turned and left, waving his hand. If you want to play, play by yourself, Ji won't play with you. Pu Yao's expression was calm, and not angry, add a 5th grade sword scripture. Zhuoemo pretended not to hear, and continued to walk forward. Add a 5th grade movement method. Zhuoemo was not moved at all, his steps not changing. I'll make 7 more golden armor guards for you. Zhuoemo decided to ignore him. And another move of, little 1,000-leaf hands. Zhuoemo instantly stopped his body, and turned to walk towards Pu Yao. What to do? Chapter 213 Ma Fan reaching target. Ma Fan felt very troubled. No matter if it was his Ningmai second stratum cultivation or the nameless scripture he cultivated, they made him one of the top practitioners in this group. But to someone as afraid of trouble as he was, this prestige wasn't a good thing. He became one of the important prospects to be nurtured. The requirements for his training far surpassed everyone else's. Everyone looked at him with gazes full of sympathy. That's right, it really was sympathy. The training for everyone was extremely strict, so the training regime of an important prospect, Ma Fan's, could only be imagined. However, other than sympathy, they did not feel any joy at his misfortunes. They didn't even have the power to save themselves. Everyone in the camp put all their strength into furiously training. If they did not complete their training, their outcome would be extremely tragic. On the first day several people did not obey. But now when everyone saw the somewhat feminine, delicate, and shy youth, they could not control the deep terror that came out of their heart. The terrified screams that meant a fate worse than death haunted their ears. The inhuman state of the people who didn't listen frequently haunted their thoughts. Whenever they thought of it, these people that were used to seeing storms of blood couldn't help but tremble. Devious, vicious, and cold-blooded, he thought of a life like grass. These words were not enough to describe this seemingly harmless and beautiful youth in front of them. Even the most rebellious person was docile and obedient in front of him. This handsome youth might be strict, but if you could successfully finish your training nothing would happen. He would never try to punish you for unsubstantiated reasons. He didn't take your talismans or scriptures. After discovering this point, everyone competed to be first, afraid of being slow, and having to taste that terrible torture that was worse than death. Ma Fan felt his life was hopeless. Each day was endless training. Heavens! How can this be completed? It hadn't been long since he had broken through to the second stratum of Ningmai. The Ling power in his body was around 15 Jing. The content of his training focused on only one thing, one of his sword moves. That's right, just the one move. Of the 3 sword moves that he knew, the strongest was the illusory shadowless sword of destruction. The power of this move was very high. Most important was that it did not cause Ling power ripples when it was cast. Without a sound or wind, it never attracted the eye, but it was surprisingly powerful. In reality, after learning it, he had only used it in combat 2 or 3 times before now. He usually was afraid of trouble, and rarely engaged in combat. If he saw the situation was not right, he would quickly use the illusory movement method to escape. His training content was just this move. However, it wasn't so simple. Gongsun Cha had 2 demands. The first was that he could use this killing move when he was using the illusory movement method. The second was that he had to be able to cast this move 3 times or more in the span of 15 minutes. And in 1 hour, he had to be able to use this move 7 or more times. When he first received the training regime, it was normal for his face to be ugly. With his present cultivation, if he cast illusory shadowless sword of destruction, he couldn't do it when he was in motion, and could only cast it 4 times. After casting it, he needed to rest for a while before casting again. This clearly short of Gongsun Cha's demands. Ma Fan didn't know how Gongsun Cha had thought of such a fatal demand. Wasn't it just asking for his life? He had once gathered his courage to request Gongsun Cha to change it. What he received was Gongsun Cha's light words, "Cultivate well, for putting your life on the line is better than losing it." When Ma Fan heard this, and his heart instantly became cold. With no other solution, he could only train with his life on the line. From the time he had started his cultivation, he had never cultivated so hard before. Using the illusory movement method at the same time as the illusory shadowless sword of destruction, this was something that he had never thought of before. With no sect, to be able to become a Ningmai second stratum, Ma Fan's talent in cultivation was not low, and his intelligence was not bad. Of course even he could see that if he could use his movement method and sword move at the same time, the power of the move would increase greatly. But with his personality of avoiding trouble, if he thought of this in the past, he would have gave up after trying a few times. But now, the blade hung above his neck. If he retreated slightly, his little life would be gone. There was no room to change his current trajectory. He could only push forward. His Ling power was so expended that he almost spat blood, his body was sore and soft that it felt like his skeleton was coming apart. For the sake of his little life, he must cultivate. 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 He had cultivated to the point that he wanted to throw up when he saw a flying sword. He actually succeeded. A flickering figure fluttered uncertainly in the air, and without warning, several explosions suddenly occurred in the air. Boom! The ground 50 zhang away from him seemed to have been struck by something invisible, suddenly exploding open, sending dirt flying. The people who had been training nearby were alarmed, and put out their Ling shields. Pia pia pia, the flying dirt hit the Ling shields like rain. Those with weaker cultivation even felt their Ling shields shake. Everyone was shocked. When they looked at the ground, they saw 7 deep holes in a row, each hole that was 2 zhang deep. Crashing down through the air, yet still so powerful, if this was someone's body. Their eyes as they looked at Ma Fan instantly changed. This guy definitely had been holding back before. However, some with nimbler minds had happy expressions. Right now, everyone was on the same rope, Ma Fan getting stronger was good for all of them. At least, the probability of keeping their lives was now higher. Gong Sun Cha also had a surprised expression. He hadn't thought that Ma Fan would be the first to achieve his demands. In his plan, Ma Fan was the primary attacker, or rather, it was better to say he was the ambusher. With the unpredictable illusory movement method, and the undetectable but powerful, illusory shadowless sword of destruction, that could kill with one blow, wasn't he born for ambushing? It was a pity that while the illusory body movement method was hard to follow, but it was easy for people to guard against, lowering the abruptness of an ambush. If there was a movement method that could completely conceal him, then Ma Fan's power would be even greater. Gong Sun Cha felt he needed to think thoroughly about how to use Ma Fan to his greatest potential. He may look confident and calm in front of these shouja, but in reality, his mind had been tense from the beginning. He was a beginner, and had not been trained. Sui Shixiang trusted him, so Shixiang certainly wouldn't blame him for making mistakes in the beginning. However, though Gong Sun Cha might look soft, he was actually very proud. Would he permit himself to make mistakes at such an important time? All of his days were spent on these shouja. He had long stopped his own cultivation. He disliked failure. Ma Fan looked in disbelief at the 7 deep holes in front of him on the ground, his mind blank. He did it, he really did it. Was this really something he had done? Dazedly landing on the ground, his mind was wandering. He had never thought that he could really do it. He gritted his teeth and persisted in training because he was forced to, but when he really met the goals which he never could have possibly conceived of before, a different emotion filled his heart. Looking at the flying sword in his hand, a seed called confidence gradually sprouted in his heart. Right now, do not create new stars. You cannot bite off more than you can chew. You should spend more time to temper these 10 stars, so they will be as bright as your brightest star. The stars are the source of your spiritual power, and the brighter they are, the more spiritual power they produce, especially stardust. The brighter the star, the more pure the star dust they spray out. This alone will be more beneficial to you. In meditation, Sui Mo's mind had retreated to his sea of consciousness. He sat cross-legged facing the stars, a ethereal strand of star light dropping from one of the stars and entering Sui Mo's forehead. As Sui Mo breathed, the star light brightened and dimmed pleasantly. Bathing in the star light, Sui Mo channeled the spell and communicated with the star. Communicating with the star was the first step in tempering it. After this, Sui Mo needed to find a star home, take in star power, and then use it to nurture the stars in his consciousness to increase the star source. This time, Pu Yao's teachings were extremely detailed, answering all his questions patiently. He also didn't drag his heels on what he had promised Sui Mo, and paid up front. After communicating with the star in his sea of consciousness, Sui Mo stopped his cultivation. Absorbing star power had to be done at night. He spent some time on reading through the good things he had gotten from Pu Yao before he started to think. The stage of Jindan was a stage that every shouja dreamed about that time. At that time, the Ling power of the shouja would form into a golden core, hence the name. The golden core was the best parts of the Ling power of a shouja. Even the source of their life was inside it. A shouja that lost their golden core would die. In other words, to obtain the golden core of a Jindan, one had to kill them. Kill a Jindan. That really was a crazy idea. But behind this crazy idea, Sui Mo had his own considerations. He would definitely have a battle with Clear Sky Sect. This Jindan was an enemy he would have to meet. Sui Mo didn't have any thought of being so lucky as to avoid it. To pass through the Jie River, they had to defeat this Jindan. That was the lowest goal. Right now, it was just increasing from defeating a Jindan to killing a Jindan. It sounded shocking, but in reality, there wasn't much of an increase. After a Jindan was defeated, they would definitely flee. It was better to kill them. If the other escaped, they would never face him directly again. It wouldn't be difficult for the Jindan to wait in the shadows to kill him. If the other went to invite a few of his Jindan friends, then this little Zhuamo would definitely die. Taking a few hundred people to scheme against a Jindan, Zhuamo felt that he had a slightly probability of victory. But if it was 2 Jindan, Zhuamo guessed he wouldn't even be able to escape. Thinking about it now, no matter if he agreed to Pu Yao's demands or not, he definitely could not let Clear Sky Sect's Jindan live. Zhuamo's heart was scared. It was lucky that he had agreed to Pu Yao's request. Otherwise, if he had let the other go after the battle, he would have caused himself many problems. After thinking it through, the rock in Zhuamo's heart instantly landed. People were like this. If they heard the great reputation of the other, it was easy to be intimidated and scared. However, once they understood that there was no other path, even against a god, they would take off a few pieces of flesh. The effect that Zhuamo's personal power could have in this battle was pitifully small. It wasn't even as high as the 3 golden armor guards. Luckily, he was never a person that relied on brute power to eat. He had a daring idea. Chapter 214 A Mountain of Problems. The art of multiple people fighting less, that was gang fighting. Gang fighting, that was fighting in groups. In Zhuamo's understanding, it was ridiculous to depend on a person that had been only studying Ling Grains 2 years ago to study battle tactics. However, if it was about gang fighting, he still had some real experience. There were many disciples in the outer sect, of course, there were those that were bullies. Adding on that the little factions were like trees in a forest, while fights didn't happen every day, there would be an occasional one. Having seen many gang fights, the winning side always had certain qualities. First, more people was better. This was the most basic tenet of gang fighting. Gang fighting, if there weren't enough people, it would be embarrassing to call it a gang. More people won over fewer people, that was the most common outcome. The second was bravery and viciousness. Bravery was not being afraid. The other side had more people, but their side dared to put their life on the line. The people who were not afraid of putting everything into a fight dominated everything around them. Other people didn't dare to get close. Even experts wanted to stay alive. As to viciousness, it meant being unconditional in attacking. Once an attack started, one could not attend to their own back and be timid, the blow coming from the vicious had to reach rock bottom. After flipping over several people, the other side would be discouraged. Next was cooperation. The essence of group fighting was using more people fighting fewer people. Then how could the smaller group win? That required cooperation. A group of cooperative people defeating disordered rabble 3 times their number, was very normal occurrence. The last was that the weapons were appropriate. Look at Ling Ying's sect, they were the epitome of this. However, even the best talismans and flying swords depended on the people using it. Idiots with talismans were still idiots. After concluding all this, Zhuamo's thoughts became nimble. It took time to increase numbers, and it was a task that could not be hurried. Regarding bravery was vicious, Zhuamo felt that it was pretty hard to attain. This group of people would be very unwilling, and were only forced to follow due to his Jinji. Cooperation could be considered, but this was Gong Sun Cha's problem. If he interfered, he might not have any positive benefit to the situation. What he could only work on weapons. He may have some talismans, but it wouldn't be better than what these people had searched for and schemed for themselves. He could only think about other objects. He actually did find something. Yin Fire Bead. The power of the Yin Fire Bead did not have to be said. He had never tried it on a Jindan, but there definitely was not a problem with people under Jindan. If one wasn't enough against Jindan, then 2. If that was still not enough, then everyone could throw them together. Each person throwing 8 or 10, surely even Jindan couldn't bear it. He thought uncertainly. However, he did feel that it was possible. In the past, he had always been worried that the matter of him knowing how to make yin beads would be revealed. Now that it was a matter of life or death, he threw those concerns to the back of his mind. If it spread, then there was a possibility of people targeting him, but that was a matter for the future. If he couldn't leave Little Mountain Jia, then there was no future. This idea made his mind jump. He inventoried the fire beads that he had, there were 10 or so. He shook his head, discontent with this number. For Ning Mai, Zhua Mo felt 10 was enough, but the other was Jin Dan. That was a Jin Dan. Just thinking about it, Zhua Mo felt respect rise, and his desire for battle decreased. Other people may not know the strength of Jin Dan, but how could Zhua Mo not know? He had suffered greatly under Xian Yen Shishu's hands and had a clear understanding of Jin Dan. If it was just him alone, Zhua Mo definitely would not be able to wound Xian Yen Shishu even with things 10 times more powerful than fire beads. This was because he basically could not throw them and have them touch Xian Yen Shishu's body. But if it was gang fighting, Zhua Mo thought there was a small chance. In a battle, there would be many talismans and flying swords flying. Before the fire bead was activated, it was not eye-catching. If the other was not on their guard, it was easy to get tricked. Zhua Mo brought this problem up with Pu Yao. Of all these people, only this guy had fought Jin Dan experts before. Your idea is somewhat interesting, Pu Yao had an interested expression. Seeing Pu Yao's expression, Zhua Mo knew that it had potential, but this requires fire beads. Where can I get more fire beads? You need to find a place with fiends. Pu Yao didn't have a solution, find someone familiar with the area and ask. Hearing Pu Yao say so, Zhua Mo knew that there was no place with fiends nearby. Otherwise, with Pu Yao's abilities, he could have immediately pointed to the location. He could only go ask the Xiuzha of Little Mountain Jia and see if any one of them knew if there were places with fiends. When he walked into the camp, he was shocked by the heated atmosphere. 20-something Ning Mai cultivating together, the presence was shocking, his little heart beating rapidly. After a long while, he recovered. Seeing Gong Sun Cha talking with Ma Fan in the corner, he hurriedly ran over. When he neared, he heard Gong Sun Cha lecturing Ma Fan. Your pathing just now was not correct. You have to remember your role. You have no set location, so you cannot stop. You need to be more nimble. Understand? More nimble. Swimming between them, search for chances. You also need to notice to retract your presence. You need the enemy to not notice your existence, notice the opportunities. Do not deliberately search to kill with one move. You are the main attacker, yes, but you have fellows. They are not just decorations. At this time, your best chance is to attack. Yes, you cannot kill him, but he will reveal openings and will give your fellows opportunities. Other than killing enemies, you need to learn how to make opportunities for your fellows. If you decide to attack, don't do those unnecessary flourishes. You have to be more straightforward, use more force. One move, you only have the chance for one move. Zhua Mo had never seen Gong Sun Cha so fierce. That's right, full of fierceness. This guy who usually looked shy and weak was bellowing a whole bunch of stuff out. Seeing Ma Fan's nervousness, not daring to miss a word, Zhua Mo's heart was suddenly full of sympathy. After the lecture, Gong Sun Cha waved and indicated for Ma Fan to continue cultivating. Everyone is working hard. Zhua Mo said with feeling. Gong Sun Cha nodded, and, when they can sell their lives, that will be almost enough. Ma Fan, who had been preparing to leave, staggered and almost fell. Zhua Mo mumbled in response, and asked uncertainly, do you need help? He had completely thrown everything on Gong Sun Cha's shoulders. Even he was slightly ashamed. Seeing Gong Sun Cha so busy his feet didn't really touch the ground, who would not feel a bit of shame. Gong Sun Cha tilted his head to think and asked, can you make a kind of talisman? What talisman do you want? Speaking of talismans, Zhua Mo felt his bravery rise. These spectacular and eye-dazzling things in the camp, he could understand if they were by themselves, but he didn't understand when they were put together. But if it was about talismans, he was good at that. Mo completely forgot that he was also self-taught in forging talismans. In total, Xin Yen Shirshu hadn't thought him that many times. Having just felt some shame, Mo instantly found a place he could express his value and make up for his deficiencies, his mind becoming alert. Oh, talismans like the necklace. Gongsun Cha took off the same heart necklace on his neck. Mo scratched his head. He understood what Gongsun Cha meant, to pass orders. Pu Yao had spoken about this problem with him. The Yao armies used the consciousness to pass on commands, the Mo armies used the Mo matrix to pass on commands, and Xiuzhe used seals. The same heart necklace could connect the user to 6 of the fellows, which meant commanding 6 other people. Clearly, 6 people could not satisfy Gongsun Cha's demands. Mo agreed with that. Facing Jin Dan, it probably needed several hundred. How to direct all of them then? The battlefield changed every second. If they could not respond immediately, then there was only death. Mo hadn't expected that he couldn't solve the problem of the Yin fiends, and instead found another problem out of his trip to the camp. However, he understood the importance of the matter could not be delayed. He immediately passed on the matter of the Yin fiend grounds to Gongsun Cha and rushed away with the same heart necklace. However, before he left, a batch of Jingshi and Ling grains was scraped off him. He had to rejoice now that Master had gotten large amounts of supplies for him when Wukong's sword sect had sent him to the desolate wood reef. They were used to great effect now. High-intensity training like this consumed enormous amounts of Jingshi and Ling grains. Mo was doubtful if he could manage it if there were 100 or more people. However, this was not the time to think of it. The most pressing problem was what Gongsun Cha had thrown over. Large-scale group fighting. Xiuzhe used seals to pass commands. If it was forging, Mo dared to try, but if it was making seals, he could do nothing. However, Mo was not a conservative person. This world would always have ways. Even more, he had a model on his hands. The effect of this same heart necklace was not any different than seals, but it was a talisman. Mo started to think of how to replicate the same heart necklace. The number of people the same heart necklace could command was much lower, and could not reach Gongsun Cha's demands. However, he thought of a method. 7 people to a troop, the leader of the troop in command. The troop leader would wear 2 necklaces, one to direct the troop members, the other receiving orders from the rank above. That way, wouldn't everything be connected? Of course, the usability of this method had to wait for the objects to be made before it could be tested. The same heart necklace was an upper 4th grade talisman. Theoretically, it was beyond of Mo's ability. But thinking that he had patted his chest just now, there was actually no one except him that could solve the problem. To be able to qualify as upper 4th grade, the forging skill of the same heart necklace was very high. There were more than 100 formations in the little necklace. These formations were either by themselves, or they were connected with others. That was the focus of Mo's study. Only by familiarizing himself with these formations and chewing through all of them, he could understand how the same heart necklace could connect minds. Only by understanding the theory could he then copy it. This wasn't a small task. However, as it related to his wealth and little life, Mo definitely wouldn't slack in the least. He would even eat this necklace if needed, much less just study it. All in, you're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.